The gunshot echoed through Mercy Point Hospital before anyone saw the blood. A soldier's body hit the emergency room floor so hard his rifle clattered across the tile, and within seconds, military Blackhawks descended on the building like it had just become a war zone. Inside the trauma bay at 1:47 a.m., 31-year-old ER nurse Jessica Malone was on her knees scrubbing vomit off the floor when Chief of Medicine Dr. Marcus Holt stepped over her like she was part of the furniture.
"You're taking up space," he said, without looking down. Nobody knew the exhausted blonde woman they treated like garbage had once saved lives under enemy fire in places that didn't exist on any map. And nobody realized the dying soldier now bleeding out 15 feet away was about to expose everyone.
Before we dive in, I need you to do something for me. Stay with this story until the very end. It goes places you won't expect. If you're hooked, hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. Jessica didn't bother standing up when Dr. Holt walked past. She'd learned months ago that getting out of his way only made him find new reasons to humiliate her. Better to stay low, finish cleaning, and disappear before he remembered her name. The overnight shift at Mercy Point Hospital in Portland, Oregon had been 18 hours long already, and her knees ached from kneeling on cold tile while doctors and residents rushed past her like she wasn't even human. "Pathetic," someone muttered. She didn't look up to see who said it. Didn't matter anymore. The youngest nurses, the ones fresh out of school with clean scrubs and optimistic smiles, had stopped making eye contact with her weeks ago. They'd learned quickly that associating with Jessica Malone was career suicide. Dr. Holt made sure of that. He had a gift for crushing people in front of an audience, and Jessica had become his favorite target. She squeezed dirty water from the mop into the yellow bucket and pushed herself to her feet. Her lower back screamed in protest. 31 years old, and she already felt 50. The fluorescent lights overhead flickered slightly, casting harsh shadows across the hallway, where a janitor was replacing a broken ceiling tile. Somewhere down the corridor, a patient screamed for pain medication. A code blue alarm blared from the ICU. Standard chaos for a Friday night. Jessica wheeled the mop bucket toward the supply closet, her hands shaking slightly from exhaustion and too much caffeine. She'd worked 6 doubles this month because the hospital was chronically understaffed and nobody else wanted the overnight shifts. Dr. Holt had made it clear during last week's staff meeting that her performance issues were the reason she'd never advance beyond floor duty. "Some people aren't meant for critical care," he'd announced while she sat in the back row, trying not to exist. The truth was simpler. She'd refused his advances 8 months ago in the parking garage, and he'd been systematically destroying her reputation ever since. But nobody wanted to hear that story. Easier to believe she was just incompetent. She pushed the supply closet door open and shoved the bucket inside. Her reflection stared back from a cracked mirror someone had hung on the back wall. Blonde hair pulled into a messy bun, dark circles under gray eyes, scrub stained with God knows what. She looked like someone who'd given up. Maybe she had. The hospital intercom crackled overhead. "All available personnel to the ER. All available personnel to the ER immediately." Jessica's stomach tightened. That announcement meant something bad. Really bad. She grabbed her stethoscope from the hook where she'd left it and jogged toward the emergency department, her worn sneakers squeaking against the linoleum. Other staff members were converging from different hallways, doctors pulling on gloves, nurses abandoning their stations, residents looking confused and terrified. The ER doors were already chaos when she arrived. A man in military fatigues lay motionless on the floor near the triage desk, surrounded by a spreading pool of blood that looked almost black under the harsh overhead lights. His face was gray, his chest rose and fell in shallow, desperate gasps. Someone had already cut away his tactical vest, revealing a gunshot wound in his upper abdomen that was bleeding faster than anyone could control. "Get him on a gurney!" Dr. Holt barked, already gloved and moving fast. 2 orderlies lifted the soldier carefully while nurses scrambled to establish IV lines. Jessica tried to help, but a resident physically pushed her aside. "We've got it," he said dismissively. She stepped back against the wall, watching as the trauma team swarmed the patient. Dr. Holt was issuing rapid-fire orders: fluids, pressors, type, and cross-match for blood transfusions. The soldier's eyes were half open, unfocused, tracking nothing. His lips moved silently like he was trying to speak but couldn't find the air. Then Jessica saw his hand. It was reaching out toward the medication cart near the stretcher, fingers trembling violently. Not random movement, deliberate, intentional. He was trying to grab something or stop someone from grabbing something. Her eyes followed his line of sight. A nurse Jessica didn't recognize, young, dark-haired, wearing a badge that said temporary agency staff, was preparing a syringe from one of the medication drawers. She moved smoothly, efficiently, like she'd done this 1,000 times. But something felt wrong. The way she angled her body slightly away from the rest of the team, the way her eyes flicked toward the door every few seconds. Jessica's pulse quickened. She'd seen that body language before, years ago, in field hospitals where people died for reasons that had nothing to do with their injuries. "What are you giving him?" Jessica asked quietly. The temp nurse didn't look up. "Fentanyl for pain management." "He's hypotensive," Jessica said, louder now. "Fentanyl will drop his pressure even further." Dr. Holt spun toward her, his face already flushed with anger. "Did I ask for your input, Malone?" "That dosage is wrong," Jessica insisted, stepping closer despite the looks she was getting from everyone around her. "It's too high, way too high. If you push that, he'll—" "Get her out of here," Dr. Holt snapped. Two security guards materialized instantly, as if they'd been waiting for the order. They grabbed Jessica by both arms, pulling her backward toward the hallway. She tried to plant her feet, but they were stronger and she was already off balance. "Wait!" she shouted. "Check the dosage, just check it." Nobody listened. The temp nurse moved toward the soldier's IV line with the syringe, her expression neutral and professional. Jessica saw the soldier's hand clench into a weak fist, saw his mouth form a word that might have been no or don't, or maybe just a gasp for air that looked like language. Then the world tilted sideways. The lights in the ER flickered once, twice. Then every monitor in the trauma bay shut down simultaneously. Cardiac monitors, ventilators, vital sign displays, all of them going dark in the same instant. The sudden silence was deafening. Nurses froze mid-motion. Dr. Holt looked around wildly, trying to understand what had just happened. "Backup generators should have kicked in," someone said. They didn't. The emergency lighting activated, bathing everything in dim red glow that made the blood on the floor look even darker. Through the ER entrance windows, Jessica saw movement outside. Multiple vehicles rolling into the parking lot with their headlights off. Big vehicles. Military vehicles. Her breath caught. The security guards loosened their grip slightly, distracted by the commotion. Jessica pulled free and moved back toward the trauma bay entrance, ignoring their protests. The temp nurse was still holding the syringe, but she'd gone completely still now, staring at the windows like she could see what Jessica was seeing. The front entrance doors burst open so violently one of the hinges cracked. 6 men in full tactical gear stormed into the hospital lobby, weapons drawn, moving in tight formation like they'd rehearsed this exact entry 100 times. They weren't police. They weren't SWAT. Their uniforms had no markings except small patches on their shoulders that Jessica recognized immediately. DOD, Department of Defense. Special Operations. The lead operator scanned the room once, his rifle raised, eyes cold and focused behind dark glasses, even though it was the middle of the night. "Nobody moves," he said. His voice carried absolute authority. Dr. Holt stepped forward, trying to reclaim control of his ER. "You can't just—" "Where's the nurse?" the operator interrupted. Holt blinked. "What nurse?" "Jessica Malone." The entire hallway went silent. Jessica felt every eye in the room turn toward her. The security guards took a step back like they'd just realized they'd been holding a live grenade. Dr. Holt's expression shifted from anger to confusion to something that looked almost like fear. "I'm right here," Jessica said quietly. The operator lowered his weapon slightly and moved toward her, his team maintaining defensive positions around the entrance. When he got close enough, she saw the name tape on his vest. Reeves. "You stopped someone from administering medication to that patient?" he asked, nodding toward the soldier on the gurney. Jessica hesitated. "I tried to." "Did they give it to him?" "I don't know. They removed me before—" Reeves turned toward the trauma bay immediately, issuing commands into his radio. "Secure the patient. Lock down this floor. Nobody leaves until we've cleared the room." More operators appeared from side hallways and stairwells,
moving with the kind of synchronized precision that only came from serious training. They weren't regular military. These were the kind of soldiers who didn't exist in official records. Dr. Holt was sputtering now, his face bright red. You have no authority to... Homeland Security has full jurisdiction over this facility as of 10 minutes ago, Reeves said without looking at him. Federal agents are inbound. You're going to want to cooperate. The temp nurse was trying to edge toward the side exit. She didn't make it 3 steps. 2 operators intercepted her, weapons raised, voices sharp. Hands where we can see them, now! She froze, her face draining of color. The syringe slipped from her fingers and clattered onto the tile floor, rolling until it came to rest against someone's shoe. Clear liquid pooled around the broken glass. Reeves picked up the syringe carefully using a gloved hand and held it up to the emergency lighting. His jaw tightened. Get a field test kit. I want to know what this is. One of his team members produced a small device from a tactical pouch and ran the test within seconds. When the screen lit up, his expression darkened. Potassium chloride. Concentrated. The words hit like a gunshot. Potassium chloride in high doses caused cardiac arrest. Immediate. Untraceable if you weren't looking for it. The perfect murder drug. Dr. Holt staggered backward slightly. That's not possible. We don't stock that concentration in the ER. Someone did, Reeves said flatly. The temp nurse was on her knees now, with her hands zip-tied behind her back, operators flanking her on both sides. She wasn't fighting. She wasn't protesting. She just stared at the floor with the kind of resignation that came from knowing everything was already over. Jessica's mind was racing. This wasn't random. This wasn't some medication error or tragic mistake. Someone had planned this. Someone had sent that woman into the ER specifically to kill that soldier before anyone could ask him questions. Reeves turned back toward Jessica, his expression slightly less hostile now. You have combat medical training. It wasn't a question. I used to, Jessica said carefully. Where? Places that don't have names. He studied her for a moment longer, then nodded, like that answer explained everything. The patient you just saved is Lieutenant Alex Brennan, Army Intelligence. He was transporting classified evidence related to an ongoing federal investigation when his convoy was ambushed 40 miles outside Portland. He managed to escape and get here, but someone knew he was coming. Jessica glanced toward the trauma bay where medical staff were now working under the supervision of military personnel, everyone moving carefully, deliberately, like they just realized they were in the middle of something much bigger than a regular ER shift. What kind of investigation? She asked. Reeves didn't answer immediately. He looked toward Dr. Holt, who was standing near the nurse's station, looking like he might vomit. Then he looked back at Jessica. The kind that involves people in this hospital. The floor seemed to drop out from under her feet. Before she could respond, the elevator at the far end of the hallway dinged softly. The door slid open and 4 people stepped out. 3 federal agents in dark suits and tactical vests, and 1 woman in civilian clothes carrying a leather briefcase that screamed government authority. She walked straight toward Dr. Holt without acknowledging anyone else in the hallway. Dr. Marcus Holt? She asked. Holt nodded slowly, his face pale. Special Agent Victoria Cross, Department of Justice. She held up her badge for exactly 2 seconds before putting it away. You're going to need to come with us. I don't understand. You're under federal investigation for conspiracy, fraud, and accessory to attempted murder, Cross said calmly. You have the right to remain silent. She kept talking, reading him his Miranda rights in the same tone someone might use to order coffee. Dr. Holt just stood there, looking stunned, while the agents moved in to take him into custody. He didn't resist, didn't argue. He just let them guide him toward the elevator like he was sleepwalking. Jessica watched it happen, her brain struggling to process what she was seeing. The man who'd spent 8 months destroying her career was being arrested, right in front of everyone. One of the younger nurses, Katie, the one who'd stopped making eye contact with Jessica weeks ago, stepped closer hesitantly. What's happening? Jessica didn't have an answer. Agent Cross walked toward her instead, her heels clicking against the tile. Jessica Malone? Yes. We're going to need you to come upstairs. Lieutenant Brennan is asking for you specifically. Jessica blinked. Why? He says you're the only person in this building he trusts. Reeves was already moving toward the elevator, his team maintaining security positions throughout the hallway.
Jessica followed numbly, still trying to understand how her night had gone from mopping floors to standing in the middle of what looked like a federal raid. The elevator doors closed, sealing her inside with Agent Cross and two armed operators. Nobody spoke during the ride up. The car climbed slowly, second floor, third floor, fourth, before stopping at a level Jessica had never accessed before. The doors opened onto a hallway that looked nothing like the rest of the hospital. No nurses' stations, no patient rooms, just a long corridor with reinforced doors and security cameras every 10 feet. This wing is restricted, Cross explained. Private suites for high-risk patients, politicians, witnesses, people who need protection. They stopped at the last door on the left. One of the operators knocked twice before opening it carefully. Inside, Lieutenant Brennan was lying in a hospital bed surrounded by medical equipment and at least 3 different monitoring systems. He looked marginally better than he had downstairs. His color was improved, his breathing steadier, but he still looked like someone who'd barely survived something catastrophic. A military doctor was checking his vitals, but he waved the man away when he saw Jessica enter. "You're the one who stopped them," Brennan said. His voice was rough, barely above a whisper. Jessica moved closer slowly. "How did you know?" "I didn't, but I saw you watching." He coughed once, wincing from the pain. "Everyone else was focused on me. You were watching them." Agent Cross stepped forward, pulling out a small recording device from her briefcase. "Lieutenant Brennan has agreed to provide testimony regarding criminal activity occurring within this hospital's administration and supply chain. What he's about to tell you is classified, but you're already involved whether you want to be or not." Jessica sat down in the chair beside the bed, her legs suddenly unsteady. "I'm just a nurse." "You were a combat medic attached to the 75th Ranger Regiment," Cross corrected. 3 deployments, 2 commendations. Classified extraction operations in Syria and Yemen. You left the service after your unit was ambushed during an evacuation mission that killed 6 members of your team. Jessica's throat tightened. She hadn't talked about that night in 4 years, not to anyone. "How do you know that?" she managed. "Because Lieutenant Brennan's investigation started when military medical supplies began disappearing from VA facilities and reappearing in black market arms deals overseas," Cross said. "The same supplies your unit relied on during operations. Someone's been stealing from military hospitals and clinics, then selling them to hostile groups through front companies disguised as legitimate medical suppliers." Brennan shifted slightly in the bed, grimacing. "We've been tracking the network for 18 months. The trail led here, to Mercy Point Hospital." Jessica stared at him. "You're saying this hospital is involved in arms trafficking?" "Not the hospital," Brennan said. "The people running it. Dr. Marcus Holt is one of them, but he's not at the top. He's middle management. Someone higher up the chain ordered the hit on me tonight because I was carrying evidence that connects them to at least $40 million in stolen military equipment." The room felt like it was spinning. "The woman who tried to kill you," Jessica said slowly, "she wasn't a real nurse." "No. She's a contractor. We've been monitoring her for months. She works for whoever pays the most." Brennan looked at Agent Cross. "Did you get her?" "She's in custody," Cross confirmed. "Not talking yet, but she will." Outside the window, Jessica could see more military vehicles arriving in the parking lot. Helicopters circled overhead, their searchlights cutting through the darkness. Police cars were blocking every exit. The entire hospital was being locked down. "What happens now?" Jessica asked. "Now we finish this," Cross said. "Holt is just the beginning. We have warrants for 3 other hospital administrators, 2 board members, and at least a dozen contractors tied to the supply chain. By morning, everyone involved in this operation is going to be in federal custody." Jessica thought about Dr. Holt's face when the agents took him away. The shock, the fear, the sudden realization that everything he'd built was collapsing. Part of her felt vindicated. Part of her just felt tired. "Why did you ask for me?" she said to Brennan. He met her eyes, and for the first time she saw something other than pain in his expression. Recognition, respect. "Because when everyone else in that room was focused on following orders and protecting their careers, you were the only one who gave a damn about keeping me alive. That's not something you forget." Agent Cross closed her briefcase with a soft click. "We're going to need a full statement from you about everything you witnessed tonight. It's going to take a while." Jessica nodded slowly. "Okay." And Jessica, Cross added, you saved a federal operative's life tonight and prevented a major intelligence breach. That's not going to go unnoticed. The words should have felt good. They just felt surreal. As she left the room to give her statement, Jessica passed by a window overlooking the ER entrance. Down below, federal agents were leading Dr. Holt toward an unmarked vehicle in handcuffs. Other staff members were being questioned, their faces pale and frightened in the harsh glow of emergency lights. The temp nurse was already gone, probably on her way to a federal holding facility somewhere. And somewhere in the building, people who'd spent months treating Jessica like she didn't matter were beginning to realize exactly who she was. The exhausted woman they'd mocked, the nurse they'd pushed aside, the person they'd underestimated so completely they never saw her coming. Jessica turned away from the window and followed Agent Cross down the hallway, her footsteps echoing in the silence. Behind her, somewhere in the chaos of the locked-down hospital, lives were being destroyed and careers were ending. Secrets that had been buried for years were finally clawing their way to the surface. And the night was far from over. The interrogation room smelled like stale coffee and fear. Jessica sat across from Agent Cross and a federal prosecutor named Daniel Wright, who looked like he hadn't slept in 3 days. A digital recorder sat on the metal table between them, its red light blinking steadily. Outside the reinforced glass window, she could see military personnel moving through corridors that had been transformed into a command center. Laptops everywhere, radio chatter, people in tactical gear drinking energy drinks and staring at monitors. Start from the beginning, Wright said. What made you suspicious of the medication? Jessica rubbed her eyes, trying to organize thoughts that felt scrambled from exhaustion and adrenaline. The dosage was wrong, way too high for someone in his condition. And the nurse, the fake one, she wasn't watching the patient. She was watching the exits. Wright scribbled notes on a yellow legal pad. Had you seen her before tonight? Never. Did Dr. Holt seem aware of what she was doing? Jessica hesitated. That was the question, wasn't it? Had Holt known the woman was there to commit murder, or had he just been incompetent enough to let it happen? I don't know. He was angry that I questioned the medication, but he's always angry when I question anything. Cross leaned forward slightly. Tell us about your relationship with Dr. Holt. The words came out harder than Jessica expected. He made a pass at me 8 months ago in the parking garage after a late shift. I turned him down. He's been making my life hell ever since. Wright stopped writing. Did you report it? To who? He runs the entire ER. Hospital administration loves him. He brings in research grants and keeps the trauma certification current. I'm just a night shift nurse who nobody listens to. The silence that followed felt heavy. Cross exchanged a look with Wright that Jessica couldn't quite read. Then Cross pulled out a thin folder from her briefcase and slid it across the table. This is Dr. Holt's financial history for the past 3 years. Bank statements, investment accounts, property records. Take a look. Jessica opened the folder slowly. The numbers didn't make sense at first. Deposits and transfers that seemed random until she started noticing patterns. Large sums appearing every few months from companies she'd never heard of. Shell corporations, probably. Money moving through accounts in ways that looked deliberately complicated. He's been taking payments, she said quietly. $2.3 million over 3 years, Wright confirmed. Laundered through medical consulting fees and equipment contracts. We've traced it back to the same network Lieutenant Brennan was investigating. Holt wasn't just covering for them. He was actively facilitating the theft. Jessica closed the folder, her hands shaking slightly. How many people died because of this? We don't know yet, Cross admitted. Military personnel overseas who didn't get the supplies they needed. Patients here who received substandard equipment because the good stuff was being diverted. Could be dozens, could be more. The weight of it settled over Jessica like something physical. All those nights she'd worked in that ER, all those patients she'd tried to save, and the entire time the person running the department had been stealing from the people who needed help most. Wright's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, then stood abruptly. They're bringing in the others. You should see this. They led Jessica down 2 flights of stairs to a lower level she hadn't known existed. The hallway here was colder, more institutional. Concrete walls, heavy doors with electronic locks. Through one window, she could see the temp nurse sitting alone in an interrogation room, staring at nothing. But Wright kept walking until they reached a larger room with one-way glass overlooking what looked like a processing area. Hospital executives were being escorted in one by one, still in their business clothes, looking confused and terrified. Jessica recognized most of them. Chief Financial Officer Robert Nash, Director of Operations Linda Sawyer, the entire hospital board of directors. "Jesus," she whispered. "The corruption went all the way up," Cross said from beside her. Holt was a key player, but he wasn't running it. These people were. They created fake purchase orders for medical supplies, then sold the real equipment to black market dealers while installing cheap knockoffs in the hospital. The profit margin was insane. Through the glass, Jessica watched as Nash was guided into a chair by two federal agents. He looked smaller than she remembered, diminished. The man who'd given speeches at hospital fundraisers about integrity and patient care was now sitting in a federal holding room with his hands cuffed behind his back. "How long have you known?" Jessica asked. "About the network?" 18 months. "About this specific cell?" 6 weeks. Lieutenant Brennan was getting close, so they tried to eliminate him before he could deliver his evidence. Cross turned toward her. "You stopping that nurse wasn't just good instincts. It was the break we needed. She's already started talking, trying to cut a deal." Jessica felt numb. What did she say? That she was hired by someone inside the hospital to make sure Brennan didn't survive the night. She doesn't know who gave the order directly, but the payment came through one of the same shell companies that's been funneling money to Dr. Holt. Wright was on his phone again, listening intently. When he hung up, his expression had changed. They found something in Holt's office. Encrypted files on his personal computer. Financial records going back 5 years, names, dates, shipping manifests. "Can they decrypt it?" Cross asked. "Already working on it, but there's something else." Wright glanced at Jessica, then back at Cross. "There's a file labeled with Malone's name." The air seemed to leave the room. Jessica's pulse hammered in her ears. "What kind of file?" "We don't know yet. It's password protected separately from the others. But the fact that he had a file on you specifically suggests he was monitoring you for some reason." The implications hit her all at once. Holt hadn't just been retaliating because she'd rejected him. He'd been watching her, documenting something. Maybe he'd known about her military background all along. Maybe he'd seen her as a threat from the beginning. Cross was already moving toward the door. "I want that file open now. Get the best tech you have." They walked quickly through corridors that seemed to stretch forever. Jessica followed, her mind racing through every interaction she'd ever had with Holt, trying to remember if she'd ever mentioned her service record, ever slipped up and revealed something about her past. She didn't think so. But someone had told him. The command center was controlled chaos when they arrived. Analysts hunched over laptops, agents speaking rapidly into phones, military liaisons coordinating with personnel outside. Someone had set up a massive digital display on one wall, showing a flowchart of names and connections, the entire criminal network laid out like a spider web. A young tech specialist waved them over. "We cracked the encryption. You're going to want to see this." The screen in front of him showed a document that looked like a dossier. Jessica's photograph at the top, her old military ID photo from 6 years ago. Below that, her service record, deployments, commendations, details about missions she'd assumed were still classified. And at the bottom, highlighted in red, potential security risk, recommend isolation. "He knew," Jessica said slowly. "He knew who I was the whole time." Cross read over her shoulder, her expression darkening. This wasn't personal retaliation. He was neutralizing a threat. You were too skilled, too observant. He couldn't risk you noticing something wrong. "So he destroyed my reputation," Jessica finished. "Made sure nobody would listen to me if I did raise concerns." Wright was scrolling through additional files now, his face pale. "There are more. Other hospital staff members flagged as risks. Doctors who asked too many questions about supply orders. Nurses who noticed discrepancies in inventory. Jesus. They were systematically silencing anyone who got close to figuring it out." A list of names appeared on the screen. Jessica recognized some of them, colleagues who'd been fired for vague performance issues or forced into early retirement, people who'd simply disappeared from the hospital roster without explanation. "Where are these people now?" Cross demanded. "We're tracking them down. Some left the state, others found work at different hospitals, but there's one name here that's concerning." Wright pointed at the screen, Dr. Sarah Vega, ER physician, worked under Holt for 2 years before she was terminated last October. According to this file, she was flagged as a critical threat because she'd started auditing medication usage patterns. What happened to her? Jessica asked. Wright clicked through several more documents before his expression went flat. She died in a car accident 3 weeks after being fired. Single vehicle collision on Highway 26. Police ruled it an accident. The room went silent. Pull everything on that accident, Cross ordered. Police reports, autopsy, witness statements. If they killed her, they didn't just destroy careers, Jessica interrupted, her voice hollow. They killed people who got too close. No one contradicted her. Agent Cross walked away to make phone calls, her voice sharp and urgent. Wright continued scrolling through files, documenting evidence that would probably put dozens of people in prison for decades. The tech specialist had moved on to another encrypted folder, working methodically to expose secrets that had been buried for years. Jessica stood there, feeling like the floor had dropped away beneath her feet. She thought she was just surviving a hostile work environment. Bad boss. Sexist culture. The usual institutional dysfunction. She'd never imagined she was standing in the middle of a criminal conspiracy that had gotten people killed. A hand touched her shoulder gently. She turned to find Reeves standing there, his tactical vest removed now, looking almost human without all the gear. "You doing okay?" he asked. Jessica almost laughed. "That's a complicated question right now." "Yeah, I bet." He gestured toward a quieter corner of the room, away from the chaos. "Can I talk to you for a minute?" They walked to a small office that had been converted into a break room. Someone had made coffee at some point. The pot was still half full but cold. Reeves poured 2 cups anyway and handed her one. "I read your file," he said. "The real one, not the bullshit Holt compiled." Jessica wrapped her hands around the cup, grateful for the warmth, even if the coffee was undrinkable. "What did it say?" "That you pulled 3 wounded soldiers out of an ambush zone under heavy fire. That you kept them alive for 40 minutes while waiting for extraction in a building that was actively being shelled. That you earned a Bronze Star and turned it down because you said you were just doing your job." She didn't respond. That night was still too raw, even years later. "It also said you left the service because you blamed yourself for the 6 team members who didn't make it out," Reeves continued quietly. "Even though the after-action report cleared you of any wrongdoing, even though your CO said you saved more lives that night than most medics save in their entire career." "Doesn't change the fact that people died," Jessica said. "No, it doesn't. But it means something that you're still here trying to save lives, even after everything you went through." Reeves took a sip of his terrible coffee and grimaced. "You could have walked away from medicine completely. Plenty of veterans do. But you didn't." "I didn't have anywhere else to go." "I don't believe that. I think you stayed because you're the kind of person who can't walk away when people need help. Even when they treat you like garbage. Even when it costs you everything." Jessica looked at him then, really looked at him. He wasn't much older than her, maybe mid-30s, scarring on his hands that suggested he'd seen his share of combat. Eyes that had that 1,000-yard stare people got when they'd been deployed too many times. "How long have you been tracking Brennan's case?" she asked. 4 months. We knew someone was going to try to kill him. We just didn't know when or where. We had protective surveillance, but they hit his convoy in a dead zone where we couldn't respond fast enough. The fact that he made it to this hospital alive is a minor miracle. And if I hadn't stopped that nurse?" Reeves met her eyes. "He'd be dead. And we'd have lost the only witness who could directly connect the network to specific military officials who've been taking kickbacks. This operation would have collapsed." The weight of that settled over her. One decision, one moment of paying attention when everyone else was distracted. That's all it had taken. "I need you to understand something," Reeves said. "When this goes public, and it will, you're going to be in the spotlight, media, congressional hearings, maybe even threats from people who were part of the network and didn't get caught yet. Your life is about to get very complicated." Jessica hadn't thought that far ahead. She'd been too focused on surviving the immediate crisis to consider what came after. "I just want to go back to work." "You can't. Not here. This hospital is going to be under federal oversight for months. Most of the staff will be investigated. Your presence would compromise the integrity of the inquiry." "So I'm unemployed?" "No, you're a federal witness. We'll make sure you're taken care of." Reeves paused. But you should know that Lieutenant Brennan has already recommended you for a civilian commendation. And there are people in Washington who've taken notice of what you did tonight. Jessica shook her head. I don't want recognition. I just want to do my job. Sometimes you don't get to choose. Before she could respond, Cross appeared in the doorway looking urgent. We've got a problem. Nash is asking for a lawyer and refusing to talk. Sawyer's doing the same. Without their testimony, we're going to have a harder time connecting the financial trail directly to the equipment thefts. What about the temp nurse? Reeves asked. She's given us names, but they're all mid-level contractors. Nobody high enough up the chain to make a real impact. We need someone inside the hospital administration to flip. Wright joined them, looking frustrated. Holt's the obvious choice, but his lawyer just showed up and shut down the interview. We've got 48 hours before we have to charge him or release him. If we can't build a solid case by then, he walks, Jessica finished. Cross nodded grimly. And everyone connected to him disappears into the legal system for years while we try to untangle everything. We need leverage, something that makes one of them break ranks. Jessica thought about Dr. Holt sitting in that interrogation room, probably furious and terrified in equal measure, thinking he could lawyer his way out of this, believing his money and connections would protect him. He has a daughter, Jessica said quietly. Everyone turned to look at her. Dr. Holt, he has a daughter. Emily. She's 15. He used to talk about her sometimes during staff meetings, piano recitals, academic awards. He was proud of her. Cross's expression shifted. You think he'd cooperate to protect her? I think he'd do anything to protect her. Whatever else he is, he loves that kid. Wright was already pulling out his phone. I'll have someone verify the daughter's information. If she's clean, no involvement in any of this, we might be able to use that. Reeves looked uncomfortable. You're talking about emotional blackmail. I'm talking about giving him a reason to do the right thing, Cross corrected. His daughter doesn't deserve to grow up with a father in federal prison for 30 years. If he cooperates, provides testimony, helps us dismantle the network, we can make recommendations to the judge. Reduce sentence. Maybe even house arrest depending on his level of involvement. Jessica felt sick. This was how the system worked. Leverage and pressure and manipulation until someone broke. It wasn't clean. It wasn't fair. But it was effective. Do it, she said. Cross left to coordinate with the prosecution team. Wright followed, still making calls. Reeves stayed behind, studying Jessica with an expression she couldn't quite read. You know he's going to hate you for this, he said. He already hates me. Yeah, but this is different. You're taking away his ability to fight back. He's going to blame you for everything. Jessica set down her coffee cup. I don't care what he thinks of me. I care about making sure nobody else dies because these people decided profit was more important than human lives. Reeves smiled slightly. You really do remind me of Brennan, same stubborn refusal to let things go. Is that a compliment? I'm not sure yet. They returned to the command center to find organized chaos. Agents were preparing for the next phase of interrogations, coordinating with prosecutors, building timelines and evidence chains. Someone had brought food, boxes of sandwiches and bags of chips that people grabbed absently while working. Jessica found herself watching the digital display on the wall, the flowchart of corruption that kept expanding as more information came in. Names she recognized, names she didn't. All of them connected by lines that represented money and equipment and stolen resources. At the center of it all was Mercy Point Hospital, her hospital. The place where she'd tried to build a new life after leaving the military. The place that was supposed to be about healing and helping people. Instead, it had been rotting from the inside, poisoned by greed and indifference. Agent Cross returned an hour later with news. We talked to Holt's daughter. Well, talked to her school counselor. Emily Holt is a straight-A student, volunteers at a homeless shelter, captain of the debate team. She's a good kid by all accounts, no knowledge of her father's activities. What did you tell the counselor? Jessica asked. That we needed to verify some information for a federal investigation. Nothing more. The daughter doesn't know her father's been arrested yet. We're holding off on notifying family members until we've completed initial interviews. That's cruel, Jessica said quietly. That's procedure. If we notify family too early, they start calling lawyers and destroying evidence. We need time to build our case. Cross pulled up a chair beside Jessica. I need to ask you something. How well do you know Dr. Holt? On a personal level, I don't. I avoided him as much as possible. But you notice things about him, his relationship with his daughter, what he cared about. That takes observation. Jessica shrugged. I pay attention. It's a habit from fieldwork. You watch people, learn their patterns. It keeps you alive. Well, your observations just gave us the leverage we needed. Cross pulled out a tablet and showed Jessica a document. This is the deal we're offering Holt. Full cooperation and testimony in exchange for a reduced sentence and protection for his daughter's future. Guaranteed college fund. Witness protection if needed. He can maintain some relationship with Emily even from prison. Will he take it? I don't know. His lawyer is reviewing it now. But if he's smart, if he actually cares about that kid, he'll realize this is his only option. They waited. Minutes stretched into an hour, then 2 hours. Jessica dozed in a chair, exhausted beyond measure, jerking awake periodically when someone walked past or a phone rang. The command center never really slept. People rotated through in shifts, maintaining constant activity. Finally, at 6:47 a.m., Wright appeared looking energized despite his obvious exhaustion. He took the deal, Wright announced. Holt's cooperating. He's giving us everything. The room erupted into controlled celebration, agents shaking hands, people making phone calls to superiors with updates. The energy shifted from tense anticipation to focused execution. Cross grabbed Jessica's arm gently. Come on, you need to hear this. They went back to the interrogation floor where Holt was sitting across from prosecutors and federal agents, his lawyer beside him looking resigned. Holt's face was gray, his eyes red-rimmed. He looked like he'd aged 10 years since Jessica had seen him in the ER. Through the speaker system, they could hear him talking. Started 3 years ago. Nash approached me with the proposal, said it was a victimless crime. We'd order premium equipment, install adequate substitutes, and sell the difference. Nobody would know. The profit margin was 60%. How much did you personally make, Bob? A prosecutor asked. 2.3 million? Maybe more, I stopped counting. What happened to Dr. Vega? Holt's voice cracked. I don't know, I swear to you, I don't know. She started asking questions about inventory discrepancies. Nash said he'd handle it. Then she was dead. I asked him if they'd, and he told me to shut up and mind my business. So you knew they'd killed her? I suspected. I didn't have proof, and by then I was in too deep to do anything about it. Jessica watched him through the glass. This man who'd made her life miserable for 8 months, who'd destroyed her reputation and isolated her from colleagues, who'd enabled a conspiracy that had gotten people killed. He looked pathetic now, small and broken and desperate. She didn't feel sorry for him. What about Lieutenant Brennan? The prosecutor continued. Did you know there was a plan to kill him? Not specifically. I got a call around midnight. Someone told me a patient was coming in who needed to be handled carefully. They said they were sending someone to assist. I didn't ask questions. I should have, but I didn't. And when Nurse Malone tried to stop the medication, Holt's voice dropped to barely a whisper. I thought she was just being difficult like always. I didn't know the injection was lethal. I swear I didn't know. Cross turned off the speaker. He's lying about that last part. He had to know. But we can prove it with the evidence we already have. Jessica couldn't look away from Holt's broken posture through the glass. What happens to him now? He testifies. Helps us build cases against everyone involved. Then he goes to federal prison for probably 10 to 15 years minimum. His medical license is already revoked. His career is over. His reputation is destroyed. And his daughter gets to grow up knowing her father is a criminal. Good, Jessica said flatly. Cross studied her for a moment. You're tougher than you look. I've had practice. They returned to the command center to find new developments. Other executives were starting to talk, their lawyers cutting deals to minimize prison time. The network was unraveling faster than anyone had anticipated. Names were emerging of suppliers, contractors, military officials who'd taken bribes. The conspiracy reached into 3 states and at least a dozen different hospitals and medical facilities. This is bigger than we thought, Wright said, staring at the expanding flowchart. This isn't just Mercy Point, this is systemic, Cross nodded grimly. Which means congressional oversight, Senate hearings, Department of Defense investigations. This is going to take years to fully prosecute. Jessica felt suddenly exhausted beyond measure. Her shift had started 20 hours ago. She'd mopped floors and been humiliated and saved a man's life and brought down a criminal conspiracy. Her brain couldn't process any more information. Reeves appeared beside her with a bottle of water. "You should rest. We've got a hotel room set up for you nearby. Federal protection until we know it's safe." "I can't go home?" "Not yet. We need to make sure nobody from the network tries to retaliate against you. Give it a few days." Jessica took the water gratefully. "What about my cat?" "Already handled. One of our agents picked him up an hour ago. He's being cared for at a secure location." Despite everything, Jessica almost smiled. The federal government had her cat in protective custody. The absurdity of it was overwhelming. Someone's phone rang urgently, then another. Then everyone seemed to be answering calls simultaneously, their expressions shifting from fatigue to alarm. Cross appeared on the other side of the room, her face pale. "We've got a situation. Turn on the news." Someone activated a wall-mounted television. The local morning news was showing aerial footage of Mercy Point Hospital from their helicopter. The parking lot was surrounded by federal vehicles, armed personnel everywhere, police barricades blocking traffic. But that wasn't the problem. The news anchor was speaking urgently. "Confirmed reports that multiple executives have been arrested in connection with a federal investigation into medical equipment fraud and attempted murder. Sources say the investigation involves military supplies being stolen and sold on the black market. We're also hearing reports of a heroic nurse who prevented an assassination attempt in the emergency room earlier this morning." Jessica's ID photo appeared on the screen. Her full name, her face broadcast to every television in Portland. "How did they get that?" Wright demanded. "Leak," Cross said coldly. "Someone inside the hospital talked to the press before we could lock it down." Jessica stared at her own face on the television screen while the anchor continued speculating about her background and what had happened. Within seconds, her phone started buzzing with notifications. Text messages, emails, social media exploding. She was public now, exposed. And somewhere out there, people connected to the conspiracy who hadn't been arrested yet were watching the same broadcast, learning her name and face, realizing she was the reason their entire operation had collapsed. Cross turned off the television. "We need to move you, now. Reeves, get her to the safe house. Full security detail. Nobody knows that location except essential personnel." Reeves was already moving, grabbing his gear. "Let's go." Jessica followed numbly, her mind struggling to adjust to this new reality. An hour ago, she'd been anonymous, a nobody, the nurse everyone ignored. Now she was headline news, a witness in a major federal case, a target. They moved quickly through back corridors and service elevators, avoiding windows and public areas. 3 armed agents accompanied them, their weapons visible now, no longer concealed. They exited through a loading dock where 2 black SUVs were waiting with engines running. "Inside," Reeves ordered. Jessica climbed into the back seat of the first vehicle. Reeves got in beside her while 2 agents took the front. The second SUV pulled in behind them as they accelerated out of the parking lot, merging into early morning traffic. Through tinted windows, Jessica watched Portland wake up around her. People going to work, students waiting for buses, coffee shops opening for the day, normal life continuing while her entire world had been turned inside out. "How long do I have to stay hidden?" she asked. "Until we've arrested everyone connected to the network," Reeves said. "Could be days. Could be weeks. And then what? Then you testify, help put these people away, and eventually, if you're lucky, you get to rebuild something like a normal life." Jessica closed her eyes, exhaustion crashing over her in waves. "I just wanted to be a nurse." "You are a nurse. You're just also a witness now, and like it or not, you're a hero."
"I don't feel like a hero." "Heroes never do." The SUV turned onto a highway heading east out of the city. Buildings gave way to trees, urban sprawl fading into rural countryside. They drove for 30 minutes without speaking, just the sound of tires on asphalt and radio chatter from the security detail. Finally, they pulled off onto a dirt road that wound through dense forest. No signs, no markers, just trees and gravel and isolation. The safe house appeared suddenly, a modern structure designed to look like a vacation cabin, but built like a fortress. Reinforced walls, bulletproof windows, security cameras everywhere.
Two agents were already stationed outside, weapons ready. "Home sweet home," Reeves said without humor. They went inside. The interior was functional but comfortable. Kitchen, living room, 2 bedrooms, everything someone would need to survive weeks in hiding. Jessica's cat was waiting in a carrier by the fireplace. She almost cried when she saw him. "Thank you," she whispered. Reeves nodded. "Get some rest. We'll debrief more later. For now, you're safe." The agents took up positions throughout the house and outside. Jessica released her cat from the carrier and watched him explore the unfamiliar space cautiously. She should eat something. She should shower. She should sleep. Instead, she walked to the window overlooking the forest and stared out at trees that stretched for miles, wondering how everything had changed so completely in the span of one night. Behind her, on a table near the door, someone had left a folder. She opened it slowly. Inside were printouts of news articles already appearing online, headlines screaming about federal raids and hospital corruption and murder conspiracies, her photo on every page. But there was something else at the bottom of the folder, a handwritten note on official Department of Defense letterhead. "Miss Malone, you saved my life tonight. I won't forget that. When this is over, I owe you a proper thank you. Lieutenant Brennan." Jessica folded the note carefully and set it aside. Through the window, she watched an unmarked helicopter appear over the tree line, circling once before disappearing again. More security, more protection, more evidence that she'd stumbled into something much bigger than herself. Her phone buzzed one more time. A text message from a number she didn't recognize. "We know where you are." Jessica's blood turned to ice. She showed the message to Reeves immediately. His expression hardened as he read it. Then he was on his radio, alerting the security team, initiating protocols. "Lock down the house," he ordered. "No one in or out. I want surveillance on every approach route. Now." Outside, agents moved into defensive positions. Weapons drawn, eyes scanning the forest. And somewhere in those trees, Jessica knew someone was watching. Waiting. The forest outside the safe house windows looked completely still. Too still. Reeves had his weapon drawn, positioned near the front entrance, while 2 agents swept the perimeter with thermal imaging equipment. Jessica stood frozen in the living room, her phone still displaying that text message like it was something radioactive. 3 words that had transformed the safe house from sanctuary to trap. "We know where you are." "Could be a bluff," one of the agents said over the radio, trying to flush her out. "Could be reconnaissance," another responded, "testing our response time." Reeves wasn't taking chances. "I want eyes on every access road within 2 miles. If anything moves that isn't ours, I want to know about it." Jessica's cat had disappeared under the couch, sensing danger the way animals did. Smart. She wished she could join him. "How did they get this number?" she asked. Her voice came out steadier than she felt. "Your personal cell was probably compromised weeks ago," Reeves said without looking away from the window. "Holt had access to employee records. He could have passed your information to anyone in the network." "So they've been tracking me." "Probably, which means they knew where you lived, where you worked, your routines, everything." The implications made Jessica's skin crawl. All those nights walking to her car alone in the hospital parking garage. All those trips to the grocery store or the coffee shop near her apartment. She'd been visible and vulnerable the entire time, never realizing she was being monitored by people who considered her a problem that needed solving. An agent's radio crackled. "Got movement, northwest quadrant, single vehicle approaching on Fire Road 7. Reeves moved instantly to a laptop showing live feed from exterior cameras. Jessica followed, watching as a dark sedan appeared on the screen, driving slowly along a narrow dirt path that wound through the trees. No headlights. Moving deliberately. "Run the plates," Reeves ordered. "Already on it. Vehicles registered to a rental company in Seattle. Rented 3 days ago under a corporate account." "Which company?" A pause while someone ran the information. Then, Cascade Medical Supply. The name meant nothing to Jessica, but Reeves's expression darkened. "That's one of the shell companies connected to the hospital network. Cross-flagged it during the financial investigation." The sedan stopped about 200 yards from the house, partially hidden behind a cluster of pine trees. The engine shut off. Nobody got out. "They're watching," Jessica said quietly, "or they're deciding whether to approach." Reeves keyed his radio. All units maintain position. Do not engage unless they breach the perimeter. I want to see what they do." The waiting was worse than action. Jessica counted her heartbeats, trying to control her breathing the way she'd been trained during field medical operations. In combat zones, panic killed people faster than bullets. Stay calm. Assess. Respond. 5 minutes passed. 10. The sedan just sat there, engine cold, windows too tinted to see inside. Then Jessica's phone buzzed again. Another text from the same unknown number. "Come outside. Alone. We just want to talk." "Like hell," Reeves muttered. "They're trying to isolate me," Jessica said. "Get me away from protection." "Obviously, which is why you're staying right here." Reeves was already coordinating with his team. "I want backup units inbound, now, and get me a trace on that number." But before anyone could respond, the sedan's door opened. A woman stepped out, hands raised above her head in clear view. She was young, maybe late 20s, wearing jeans and a dark jacket. No visible weapons. She took 3 steps forward, then stopped, waiting. "Who the hell is that?" one of the agents asked. Facial recognition software ran on the laptop screen, pulling from federal databases. The match came back within seconds. Jennifer Costa, former nurse, previously employed at Mercy Point Hospital, terminated 2 years ago. Jessica's memory jolted. "I remember her. She was fired for stealing medications from the pharmacy." "Not stealing," a voice said from behind them. Everyone turned. Agent Cross had arrived without Jessica noticing, flanked by 2 additional agents. She looked like she'd been awake for 48 hours straight. Jennifer Costa was fired for reporting medication discrepancies to hospital administration, Cross continued, studying the woman on the screen. She claimed someone was altering inventory records and diverting supplies. Administration investigated and found evidence that she was the one doing it. She was terminated and her nursing license was suspended. "But she wasn't actually stealing," Jessica said slowly. "No. She was set up. Classic misdirection. She noticed the theft, reported it, and they framed her to discredit her and make the problem go away." Cross moved closer to the window, studying the woman standing outside with her hands still raised. "The question is, what's she doing here now?" "Maybe she wants revenge," Reeves suggested. "Or maybe she wants to help," Jessica said. Everyone looked at her. "Think about it. She was destroyed by these people. Lost her career, her license, her reputation. If she's connected to them now, it's not by choice. They probably have leverage on her." Cross considered this for a moment, then made a decision. "Bring her in. Full search. If she's clean, I want to talk to her." 2 agents moved out through the back entrance, circling wide to approach from angles the woman couldn't see. They emerged from the tree line behind her, weapons drawn, voices sharp with commands. "Hands behind your head. On your knees. Now!" The woman complied immediately, moving slowly and carefully. One agent searched her while the other maintained cover. No weapons. No phone. Just car keys and a wallet. They brought her inside through the back entrance, hands zip-tied, flanked by armed personnel. She looked terrified, but also resigned, like she'd known this was coming and had accepted it already. Cross sat down across from her at the kitchen table. "Jennifer Costa. We meet at last." "You know who I am?" Jennifer's voice was hoarse. "We know everything. Your termination from Mercy Point, the frame job. What we don't know is why you're here." Jennifer glanced at Jessica, recognition flickering across her face. "You're the nurse from the news, the one who stopped them last night." "That's right." "Then you're in danger, serious danger. They sent me to—" She stopped, swallowing hard. "They told me to deliver a message." "What message?" Cross asked. "That if she testifies, they'll make sure she ends up like Dr. Vega. Car accident. No witnesses. Just another tragic death that nobody questions." The room went silent. Reeves moved closer, his expression hard. "Who sent you?" "I don't know names. I get instructions through encrypted messages. They told me where to find her and what to say. That's it." "Bullshit," Reeves said flatly. "You drove here. You sent those texts. You're working for them." "No." Jennifer's voice cracked. "I'm being blackmailed. They have evidence, fake evidence, that I was actually stealing medications 2 years ago. If I don't do what they say, they'll release it to federal investigators, and I'll go to prison for crimes I didn't commit."
Cross leaned back, studying the woman carefully. Why should we believe you? Because I'm telling you the truth. I reported the thefts. I tried to do the right thing, and they destroyed me for it. I lost everything. My career, my license, my savings defending myself in court. I'm working at a pharmacy counter now, making minimum wage because nobody will hire a nurse with a suspended license. Jessica felt something twist in her chest. She'd been lucky. She'd survived Holt's attempts to destroy her reputation only because federal intervention had come before he could finish the job. Jennifer Costa hadn't been that fortunate. If you're being blackmailed, Cross said, then help us. Tell us everything you know about their operation. I don't know anything. I'm a messenger. They use people like me, people they've already destroyed because we're disposable and scared enough to follow orders. How many others like you are there? Jennifer hesitated. I don't know, dozens maybe? People they've compromised. Nurses, doctors, technicians. Anyone who got too close to their operation and survived the cover-up. Cross exchanged a look with Reeves. This was bigger than they'd realized. Not just a criminal network, but a system of control built on fear and leverage. We can protect you, Cross said, if you cooperate. Full immunity in exchange for testimony about the blackmail operation. They'll kill me. They'll kill you anyway once you're no longer useful. This way, you have a chance. Jennifer looked at Jessica again, her eyes desperate. Is it worth it? Testifying? Because from where I'm sitting, the people who try to do the right thing end up dead or destroyed, and the ones who keep their heads down survive. Jessica thought about the past 8 months, the humiliation, the isolation, the nights she'd considered quitting because it hurt too much to keep fighting. But she also thought about Lieutenant Brennan lying on that ER floor, bleeding out because people valued money over human lives. It's worth it, she said quietly, because if we don't stop them, they'll just keep destroying people until there's nobody left willing to stand up. Jennifer's shoulders slumped. Okay, I'll help. But I want protection, real protection. Not just for me, for my family. They have a 10-year-old son. If something happens to him because I cooperated, your family will be moved to a secure location within the hour, Cross promised. Federal marshals. New identities if necessary. Nobody touches them. It took 30 minutes to coordinate. Phone calls to marshal services. Agents dispatched to Jennifer's home to collect her family. Paperwork and legal agreements signed while everyone waited tensely. Jessica watched it unfold, realizing how many people had been caught in this conspiracy. Not just the criminals profiting from it, but the victims they'd silenced. The collateral damage of greed. When the arrangements were finalized, Cross turned back to Jennifer. Now tell us everything. Who gave you the instructions? How do they contact you? What else do you know? Jennifer talked for over an hour, describing a blackmail network that was terrifyingly efficient. Anonymous messages through encrypted apps, dead drops for information, threats delivered through intermediaries. The people running it stayed invisible, using layers of disposable operatives to insulate themselves. Have you ever met anyone face to face? Reeves asked. Once. About 6 months ago. A man approached me in a parking lot, said he knew what I'd done, the fake evidence they had. He told me that if I cooperated, the charges would disappear. If I refused or went to the police, I'd spend 10 years in federal prison. Description? White male? 50s? Expensive suit. Spoke like someone educated, professional. He had this way of talking that made you feel like he was doing you a favor, even while he was threatening your life. Cross pulled up photos on her laptop. Recognize any of these people? Jennifer scrolled through images of hospital administrators, board members, contractors. She stopped on one photo, her face going pale. Him. That's him. The man in the photo was distinguished looking, silver hair, confident smile. The caption below read, David Mitchell, CEO, Pacific Northwest Medical Group. Jessica's stomach dropped. She'd seen that name before, on hospital letterhead, in emails about strategic initiatives, during annual meetings where senior leadership addressed staff. He was the person at the very top of Mercy Point's corporate structure. Jesus, Wright said from across the room. He'd arrived at some point during Jennifer's testimony. Mitchell oversees 17 hospitals across 4 states. If he's involved, then the corruption isn't limited to Mercy Point, Cross finished. It's systematic, built into the entire corporate structure. Reeves pulled up Mitchell's background on another screen.
Impressive credentials. Stanford MBA, former healthcare consultant. Appointed CEO 6 years ago with a mandate to improve profitability across the hospital network. He'd certainly accomplished that. We need to arrest him immediately, Wright said. We can't. Cross's voice was tight with frustration. We don't have enough direct evidence yet. Jennifer's testimony puts him at the scene of a blackmail conversation, but he'll claim it was a misunderstanding. We need financial records, communications, something that proves he was coordinating the operation. Holt might have that information, Jessica said. He's been cooperating. Maybe he can connect Mitchell directly to the conspiracy. Wright was already on his phone, coordinating with prosecutors back at the command center. Jessica listened to half the conversation, legal jargon and procedural language that translated to, they were racing against the clock. Mitchell's lawyers are good, Wright said after hanging up. If we tip our hand too early, he'll disappear into the legal system and we'll spend years trying to extract him. We need ironclad evidence before we move. Then we get it, Cross said. She turned to Jennifer. You said you receive instructions through encrypted messages. Do you still have access to those accounts? Yes. They haven't shut me down yet. Then we use you as bait. You tell them you delivered the message to Jessica. You wait for further instructions. And when they respond, we trace the communication back to its source. Jennifer looked terrified. If they realize I'm cooperating, they won't. You'll do exactly what they expect. We'll monitor everything from here. You're not alone in this. It was dangerous. Using a civilian as an active asset in an ongoing investigation violated about a dozen protocols, but Cross wasn't asking permission. She was making the call because time was running out and they needed leverage. Jennifer agreed reluctantly. They set her up at the kitchen table with her phone, agents monitoring every message and call. She typed carefully. Message delivered. She's scared. What's next? The response came within minutes. Good. Maintain position. Await further instructions. Nothing incriminating. Nothing they could use. Whoever was on the other end knew how to communicate without leaving evidence. But they'd made a mistake. The tech specialist analyzing the message traffic looked up suddenly. I've got something. The encryption protocol they're using has a vulnerability. It's old code, probably repurposed from an outdated system. I can exploit it to get a location trace, but it'll take time. How much time? Cross asked. 2 hours? Maybe 3? You've got 90 minutes. Get it done. The specialist went to work while everyone else waited. Jessica felt useless standing around while people far more qualified handled the investigation. Her role was supposed to be simple: survive, testify, go home. Instead, she was trapped in a safe house watching federal agents build a case against people who wanted her dead. Reeves appeared beside her with coffee. You should eat something. I'm not hungry. When's the last time you ate? Jessica had to think about it. More than 24 hours ago, before her shift started. Back when her biggest problem was Dr. Holt's harassment and not international arms trafficking. Point made, she muttered, taking the coffee. They found sandwiches someone had brought earlier. Jessica forced herself to eat mechanically, her body needing fuel even if her brain was too wired to care about food. Across the room, Jennifer sat rigid in her chair, staring at her phone like it might explode. She's brave, Jessica said quietly. Doing this. She's desperate, Reeves corrected. There's a difference. Brave people choose danger. Desperate people end up in it because they're out of options. What category do I fall into? Reeves looked at her for a moment. Stubborn. You saw something wrong and wouldn't let it go even when everyone told you to. That's different from brave or desperate. That's just who you are. Before Jessica could respond, the tech specialist shouted across the room. Got it. Location trace came through. The messages are originating from a private office in downtown Portland. Mitchell's corporate headquarters. Cross was moving immediately. Get me a warrant. I want authorization to search those offices within the hour. It's Sunday morning, Wright reminded her. Finding a judge who'll sign off on this. Then find one. Wake them up if you have to. We're not losing Mitchell because of paperwork. Things move fast after that. Legal teams coordinating with judges. SWAT units being briefed for the raid. Evidence specialists preparing to seize computers and files. The operation was massive, coordinated across multiple agencies. Jessica watched it unfold with a strange sense of detachment. This had started with her noticing something wrong in an ER. Now it was federal raids and congressional oversight and international implications. I need to make a call, she said suddenly. Reeves frowned. To who? Lieutenant Brennan. He should know what's happening. He started this investigation. After some discussion, they allowed it on a secured line. The phone rang 3 times before Brennan answered, his voice still rough from his injuries. Miss Malone, wasn't expecting to hear from you this soon. They're about to arrest the CEO, David Mitchell. He's been running the whole operation. Silence on the other end. Then, Mitchell. Of course, we'd identified him as a person of interest, but couldn't get enough evidence to move on him. How did you... Long story. But you should know they threatened me. Sent someone to deliver a message that I'd end up like Dr. Vega if I testified. Are you safe? For now. Reeves and his team are handling security. Good. Reeves is solid. He'll keep you alive. Brennan paused. I'm being moved to a different facility later today, somewhere more secure. They're worried about additional assassination attempts. Are you okay? I've been shot before. I'll survive. But Jessica, be careful. These people don't give up easily. Even after we arrest Mitchell, there will be others in the network who'll want revenge. I know. No, I don't think you do. You exposed them, made them vulnerable. That makes you dangerous to anyone still operating in the shadows. Watch your back. The call ended. Jessica handed the phone back to Reeves, feeling cold despite the warm room. Cross was coordinating final raid preparations when her phone rang. She answered, listened for 10 seconds, then her expression changed to something Jessica had never seen before. Genuine alarm. When? Cross demanded. How long ago? Everyone in the room went quiet. Cross hung up and turned to face them. Mitchell's gone. His security detail reported him missing 30 minutes ago. They went to collect him for routine transportation and found his office empty. No sign of forced entry. He just vanished. He knew, Wright said. Someone tipped him off, or he was monitoring his own communications and saw us trace the messages. Cross was already issuing orders. Lock down all airports, train stations, border crossings. I want his photo distributed to every law enforcement agency in the region. Nobody leaves this area without being checked. But Jessica knew it was already too late. Mitchell had resources and connections. If he'd had 30 minutes, he could be anywhere by now. What about the others? She asked. Nash, Sawyer, the board members? They're still in custody, right? Cross nodded. Secured in federal holding, but Mitchell was the key. Without him, we can't connect the entire network. We'll get convictions on the people we have, but the operation itself could continue under new leadership. The room felt smaller suddenly. All this work, all this danger. And the person at the top had slipped away. Reeves's radio crackled urgently. We've got multiple vehicles approaching, fast, unknown affiliation. Everyone moved at once. Agents taking positions at windows and doors, weapons drawn. Cross pulling Jessica toward the back of the house where the walls were most reinforced. Through the front window, Jessica saw 3 black SUVs racing up the access road, moving too fast for the terrain. They weren't trying to be subtle. This was an assault. How many? Reeves asked into his radio. Counting at least 8 hostiles, armed, military tactics. Fall back to defensive positions. Protect the witness. The first SUV skidded to a stop 50 yards from the house. Doors opened and men poured out, all wearing tactical gear, all carrying rifles. Not police, not federal agents. Private contractors. Cascade Medical Supply, Cross said, reading patches on their vests through binoculars. Mitchell's personal security force. The lead contractor raised a megaphone. Send out Jessica Malone, nobody else needs to get hurt. Reeves keyed his radio. Backup ETA? 12 minutes. 12 minutes might as well be 12 hours. Jessica could see more contractors moving through the trees, flanking the house, establishing firing positions. These weren't amateurs, they were trained operators executing a coordinated assault. They're going to breach, one of the agents said tensely. Cross grabbed Jessica's arm. Basement, now. There's a tunnel that leads to an emergency exit half a mile north. You go through there and you don't stop until you reach the extraction point. What about all of you? We hold them off long enough for you to escape. That's the job. Jessica wanted to argue but knew it was pointless. She followed Cross down a narrow staircase into a concrete basement that smelled like earth and old water. A hidden panel in the wall opened to reveal a dark tunnel barely wide enough for one person. Follow this straight. Don't deviate. There's an exit with a keypad. Code is 4799. Outside, you'll find a vehicle with keys in the ignition. Drive north until you hit Highway 26, then call this number. Cross pressed a card into Jessica's hand. They'll extract you. Upstairs, the first gunshots rang out. Jessica flinched. I can't just leave. You can and you will. You're the witness. Without you, everything we've done is worthless. Now go. Cross shoved her toward the tunnel entrance. Jessica stumbled forward into darkness, her hands finding rough concrete walls on either side. Behind her, she heard Cross sealing the panel, cutting off the light and sound from above. The tunnel was pitch black. Jessica pulled out her phone, using its flashlight to navigate. The passage stretched ahead, sloping slightly downward, water dripping from the ceiling. Her footsteps echoed too loudly. Every sound felt amplified. Above, muffled through earth and concrete, she could hear the firefight intensifying. Automatic weapons. Shouting. Explosions that might have been flashbangs or grenades. She moved faster, stumbling over uneven ground, her breathing too loud in the confined space. The tunnel seemed endless. How far had she gone? 100 yards? 200? Her phone battery was at 15%. The light flickered once. Jessica's heart hammered. If the phone died, she'd be trapped in darkness with no way to find the exit. She moved even faster, practically running now, one hand on the wall to guide her. Finally, ahead, she saw it. A metal door with a keypad glowing faintly green. 4799. She punched in the code with shaking hands. The lock disengaged with a heavy click. Jessica pushed the door open and emerged into gray morning light, gasping for air. She was in a clearing surrounded by dense forest. No sign of the safe house or the firefight, just trees and silence and a single vehicle parked under camouflage netting, a beat-up pickup truck that looked like it had been abandoned for years. Jessica climbed inside, keys in the ignition like Cross promised. The engine turned over reluctantly, coughing smoke before settling into a rough idle. She drove. The logging road was barely navigable, full of potholes and fallen branches. Jessica gripped the steering wheel hard, forcing the truck through obstacles, branches scraping against the sides. Behind her in the distance, she heard helicopter rotors. Backup arriving. Too late to help, but maybe in time to capture the contractors. She reached Highway 26 20 minutes later, merging into light traffic heading away from Portland. Her phone rang immediately. This is Marshal Services? Are you clear of the location? Yes. Proceed to mile marker 147. There's a rest stop. We'll meet you there in 30 minutes. Do not stop anywhere else. Do not contact anyone. Understood? Understood. The call ended. Jessica drove on autopilot, her mind replaying the past few hours, Cross shoving her into the tunnel, Reeves and his team holding off an assault force, Jennifer Costa risking everything to expose the blackmail network, and somewhere out there David Mitchell was running free, probably already out of the country. She reached the rest stop as instructed, a seemingly empty parking lot with a few semi-trucks and a closed visitor center. Jessica parked and waited, watching every vehicle that passed, every person who walked by. 5 minutes. 10. A van pulled up beside her. Side door slid open. A woman in a marshal's uniform gestured. Inside, quickly. Jessica didn't hesitate. She climbed into the van, which immediately accelerated back onto the highway. There were 3 marshals inside, all armed, all watching the road like they expected pursuit. Where are we going? Jessica asked. Secure location. Different from before. Mitchell's people compromised the safe house somehow. We're not taking chances. They drove for 2 hours, changing vehicles twice, taking circuitous routes designed to lose anyone following. Jessica dozed fitfully, exhausted beyond measure, jerking awake whenever the van turned sharply. Finally, they stopped at what looked like a private airport. Small planes, a single runway, no commercial traffic. Out, the lead marshal ordered. Jessica followed them across the tarmac to where Agent Cross was waiting beside a small jet. Her suit was torn, blood on her sleeve, but she was alive. You made it, Cross said. What about Reeves, the others? 2 agents injured, none dead. The contractors retreated when helicopter support arrived. We captured 3 of them. The rest scattered. And Mitchell? Cross's expression darkened. Still gone. But we're tracking him. We'll find him. Why did you bring me here? Because you're not safe in Oregon anymore. Mitchell will keep sending people until you're dead or he's in custody, so we're moving you somewhere he can't reach. Cross gestured toward the jet. Washington, D.C. You'll testify before a closed congressional committee tomorrow morning. After that, witness protection until the trial. Jessica stared at the plane, feeling like her life was spinning out of control faster than she could process. 24 hours ago, she'd been mopping hospital floors. Now she was boarding a federal jet to testify before Congress about international arms trafficking. What if I refuse? You won't, Cross said simply. Because you know, if you don't testify, everyone who died because of this conspiracy died for nothing. And you're not the kind of person who walks away from that. She was right. Jessica climbed the stairs into the jet. Plush seats. Federal agents everywhere. The kind of security reserved for people whose testimony could bring down empires. The plane taxied immediately, lifting off into gray morning sky. Jessica watched Oregon disappear below, wondering if she'd ever see home again. Cross sat down across from her. I need to prepare you for what's coming. The committee hearing tomorrow will be classified, but your testimony will eventually become public. When it does, you'll be famous. Everyone will know your face, your name, your story. I don't want to be famous. Too late. You're the nurse who exposed a multi-billion-dollar criminal conspiracy. You're going to be on every news channel, every magazine cover. There will be book deals and movie offers and people wanting interviews. Your life as you knew it is over. Jessica closed her eyes. What about after? After I testify? Witness protection if you want it. New identity, new location, new life. Or you can take your chances going back to Portland with federal security. Either way, you'll never be anonymous again. The plane climbed higher, punching through clouds into blue sky. Jessica watched the world shrink below, feeling untethered from everything she'd known. Her phone buzzed one final time. Another text from an unknown number. You think you've won. But Mitchell isn't the top. He's middle management. The real people running this are still out there. And they're watching you right now. Jessica looked up sharply, searching the faces of every person on the plane. The pilots, the marshals, Cross. Every single one of them could be compromised. Every single one could be working for someone else. Cross saw her expression change. What's wrong? Jessica handed her the phone silently. Cross read the message, her face going pale. Then she stood abruptly, drawing her weapon. Cross's weapon came up fast, sweeping across every person in the cabin. Nobody moves, she said, her voice flat and cold. Jessica, get behind me. Now. Jessica stood slowly, her legs unsteady, moving toward the rear of the plane while keeping everyone in view. The marshals had their hands visible, but looked confused rather than guilty. The pilots were still in the cockpit, unaware of the tension building behind them. Someone on this plane is compromised, Cross announced. Someone passed our location to Mitchell's network. That message proves it. One of the marshals, a man named Torres, raised his hand slightly higher. Agent Cross, with respect, that text could have been sent by anyone who has access to witness protection protocols. Half the DOJ knows we're moving her to D.C. Then half the DOJ is suspect, Cross snapped. Until we know who leaked our location, everyone is a potential threat. The plane continued climbing, autopilot engaged, heading east toward Washington. Jessica pressed herself against the back wall, trying to think through the panic. The message had been too specific. They're watching you right now. Not, they know where you are, or they'll find you. Present tense, active surveillance. Check for tracking devices, Jessica said suddenly. On me, on my clothes, everything I brought from the safe house. Cross kept her weapon trained on the others while another marshal, a woman named Hayes, approached Jessica cautiously. She pulled out a small electronic scanner and ran it over Jessica's body, her clothes, her shoes. The device beeped sharply near Jessica's left pocket. Hayes reached in carefully and extracted Jessica's phone. The scanner indicated a signal coming from inside the device itself. Not the normal cellular transmission. Something else. Something hidden. It's been modified, Hayes said, examining it closely. There's hardware here that shouldn't exist. Military-grade tracking chip embedded in the battery compartment. Jessica's stomach dropped. I've had that phone for 2 years. How long has it been there? No way to know without disassembling it completely. Could have been installed during manufacture, or someone could have swapped your phone at some point without you noticing. Cross lowered her weapon slightly, her expression grim. Which means they've been tracking your location this entire time. Every safe house, every movement, everything. We've been operating under the assumption we were secure when we were completely exposed. Torres looked sick. If they know we're on this plane, they know where we're landing, Cross finished, which means Washington isn't safe either. They'll have people waiting at the airport. Jessica's mind was racing. 2 years. She'd had that phone for 2 years, which meant the surveillance had started long before last night, long before Lieutenant Brennan. Someone had identified her as a potential problem and marked her for monitoring years ago. It has to be related to my military service, she said quietly. They knew who I was before I ever started working at Mercy Point. They were watching me from the beginning. Cross was already on the plane's secure communication system, calling back to the command center. This is Cross. We have a compromised witness phone with active tracking. Assume all previous locations are burned. I need alternative landing coordinates and a complete security sweep of everyone who had access to witness protection protocols. The response was rapid and professional. New coordinates, new extraction plan. But Jessica could hear the strain in the voices on the other end. The conspiracy was bigger than anyone had realized, with tendrils reaching into federal agencies that were supposed to be secure. Hayes destroyed the phone, smashing it and removing the tracking chip with surgical precision before sealing the pieces in a metal evidence bag. That'll stop the signal, but the damage is already done. They know we're airborne heading east. Can we divert? Torres asked. Not without filing new flight plans that will be visible to anyone monitoring air traffic, Cross said. We maintain course but change the destination, land somewhere unexpected. The pilots were notified. The plane banked slightly, adjusting trajectory. Through the window, Jessica watched clouds stream past, feeling like she was trapped in a machine she couldn't control. Every decision, every movement had been monitored and anticipated. I need to know something, Jessica said to Cross. That message said Mitchell isn't the top. If he's not running this, who is? Cross holstered her weapon finally, the immediate threat reduced but not eliminated. We don't know. Mitchell's financial records show payments from offshore accounts that we haven't been able to trace yet. Whoever's above him has resources that exceed normal criminal organizations. This is corporate level, maybe even state-sponsored. You're saying governments are involved? I'm saying we can't rule it out. Medical supply theft feeding black market arms dealers who supply hostile foreign actors. That's the kind of operation that requires protection at multiple levels. Someone's been shielding this network for years. The implications were staggering. Jessica had thought she was exposing hospital corruption. Instead, she'd stumbled into something with international reach and consequences she couldn't fully comprehend. The plane flew for another 90 minutes before descending toward a small regional airport in rural Virginia instead of D.C. Military personnel were waiting on the tarmac along with additional federal agents, faces Jessica didn't recognize, which Cross said was intentional. Fresh team. No one who'd been involved in the previous operation. They landed hard, the pilots bringing the plane down faster than was comfortable. The moment the wheels touched asphalt, armed soldiers surrounded the aircraft. Jessica was escorted out quickly, hustled into an armored vehicle with blacked-out windows. Where are we going? She asked. Fort Belvoir, Cross said from beside her. Military base, better security than civilian facilities. We'll keep you there until the congressional hearing. The drive took 40 minutes through countryside that gradually gave way to fenced compounds and checkpoints. Soldiers everywhere, guard towers, barriers designed to stop vehicle attacks. This wasn't witness protection. This was military detention-level security. They brought Jessica to a building deep inside the base, concrete and reinforced steel, no windows on the lower floors. Inside, the conference room where she'd give her preliminary testimony looked like a bunker. Senators and congressional staffers were already assembling, along with military brass and intelligence officials. A senator Jessica recognized from news coverage, Margaret Holloway, chair of the Armed Services Committee, approached immediately. Miss Malone, thank you for your cooperation under extraordinarily difficult circumstances. I didn't have much choice, Jessica said. Holloway's expression was sympathetic but firm. No, I suppose you didn't. What you've uncovered is possibly the largest breach of military supply chain integrity in decades. We need your testimony to understand the full scope. They sat Jessica at a table facing a panel of senators, military officers, and intelligence directors. A court reporter positioned nearby. Everything recorded, everything official. Cross stood against the wall with other agents, her expression unreadable. Senator Holloway opened the proceedings. Miss Malone, please state your name and occupation for the record. Jessica Malone, registered nurse formerly employed at Mercy Point Hospital in Portland, Oregon. And you were present at the hospital on the night of November 15th when Lieutenant Alex Brennan was brought to the emergency room suffering from gunshot wounds? Yes. Tell us what you observed. Jessica recounted the events methodically. The soldier collapsing in the ER. The medication that was wrong. Dr. Holt's anger when she questioned it. The federal agents arriving. Everything that had followed. The panel listened without interruption, taking notes, occasionally exchanging glances. When she finished, another senator, Marcus Webb, Defense Appropriations, leaned forward. Miss Malone, you stated that you suspected the medication dosage immediately. What made you notice when other medical professionals in the room did not? Jessica chose her words carefully. I served as a combat medic for 6 years. I've seen medication used as a weapon before. I know what it looks like when someone's trying to kill a patient instead of treat them. And you acted on that suspicion despite being ordered to stand down by your superior? Yes. Why? Because letting someone die when you can prevent it isn't an option. Not for me. Webb nodded slowly. Your military record indicates you received commendations for actions under fire, yet you left the service and took a position as a civilian nurse at a hospital where you were apparently treated with significant disrespect by administration. Why? The question hit closer than Jessica expected. I wanted to keep helping people. The military gave me skills, but after what happened to my unit, I needed distance from combat operations. Hospital work seemed like a way to use my training without the violence. Did it work? Not as well as I'd hoped. There was quiet laughter around the room, though it felt strained. These people weren't here for human interest stories. They wanted to know how a multi-billion-dollar criminal conspiracy had operated under federal oversight for years without detection. Intelligence Director Catherine Price spoke up, her voice sharp. Miss Malone, you've indicated that hospital CEO David Mitchell is involved in this conspiracy. Do you have direct evidence of his participation? No, I never met him personally, but witnesses have identified him, and financial records show payments flowing through his corporate accounts. Witnesses whose credibility could be questioned in court, Price countered. Jennifer Costa was fired for cause. Her testimony may not hold up under cross-examination. Cross stepped forward from the wall. Director Price, with respect, we have corroborating evidence from multiple sources. Encrypted communications traced to Mitchell's office. Financial transactions. Testimony from other hospital executives who've agreed to cooperate. This isn't just one witness's word. And yet Mitchell himself has disappeared, Price said, making it impossible to interrogate him directly or verify these claims. Because someone warned him we were coming, Cross said tightly. Someone with access to classified operational details. The room went silent. Senator Holloway's expression hardened. Are you suggesting there's a leak within federal law enforcement or intelligence agencies? I'm stating a fact. Our witness's location was compromised multiple times despite following every security protocol. Her phone was tracked using military-grade surveillance technology. Mitchell vanished 30 minutes before we could arrest him. Someone inside the system is working against us. Price looked like she wanted to argue but couldn't. Instead, she turned back to Jessica. Miss Malone, do you have any knowledge of who might be assisting Mitchell? No, but the message I received on the plane suggested he's not at the top of the organization. Someone higher up is protecting him. What message? Cross produced the evidence bag containing Jessica's destroyed phone and the tracking chip. This was embedded in the witness's personal phone, possibly for years. This morning, she received a text claiming Mitchell is middle management and that the real operators are still watching her. Price examined the chip, her expression shifting from skepticism to concern. This is definitely military hardware, not commercially available. Someone with access to defense contracts or classified equipment provided this, which narrows the suspect pool considerably, Senator Webb said. How many people have both access to this technology and motivation to protect a medical supply theft ring? Depends on how much money we're talking about, another military officer said. Colonel Martin Hayes, according to his nameplate. If the profits are substantial enough, corruption can reach surprisingly high levels. A junior aide entered the room and handed Senator Holloway a tablet. She read it quickly, then looked up with an expression Jessica couldn't decipher. We've just received word from federal agents in Seattle. David Mitchell's body was found in a hotel room an hour ago. Single gunshot wound to the head. Apparent suicide. The room erupted into chaos. Jessica felt the floor tilt. Mitchell was dead. The person who could have connected the entire conspiracy was gone, taking his knowledge with him. That's not suicide, Cross said immediately. That's cleanup. Someone silenced him before he could be questioned. The scene is being processed now, Holloway said, reading from the tablet. Preliminary reports indicate no signs of struggle. Weapon registered to Mitchell himself. Handwritten note found on the desk. What did the note say? Price demanded. Holloway hesitated, then read aloud. I take full responsibility for the conspiracy at Mercy Point Hospital and related facilities. I acted alone. No one else in the corporate structure was aware of my activities. Bullshit, Torres muttered from across the room. Holloway didn't disagree. It's certainly convenient. Mitchell commits suicide and leaves a confession that absolves everyone else involved. It closes the investigation neatly. Too neatly, Cross agreed. Someone staged this, killed him and made it look self-inflicted. The handwriting analysis will probably show the note is fake. Even if it is, Price said quietly, proving murder versus suicide in a case this politically sensitive will take months. And without Mitchell's testimony, we lose our direct connection to the higher levels of the organization. Jessica watched them discuss the implications, feeling numb. Mitchell had been killed to protect someone else. Someone powerful enough to reach inside a hotel room and execute a target without leaving evidence. What about the others, she asked. Holt, Nash, Sawyer, they're still alive, right? In federal custody, Cross confirmed, under maximum security. But they don't know what Mitchell knew. They can testify about the hospital operations, but not the broader network. So we're back to square one, Jessica said. Not entirely, Senator Holloway said. Your testimony establishes the crime occurred. The evidence we've seized proves systematic theft and distribution. We may not have the top level yet, but we can dismantle what we found and build from there. It wasn't enough. Jessica could see it in everyone's faces. Without the person at the top, the network could rebuild. New middlemen, new operations, same corruption under different names. Colonel Hayes spoke up suddenly. What about Lieutenant Brennan? He was investigating this before the attack. What does he know about the higher levels? He's in protective custody, Cross said, being moved to Walter Reed Medical Center today for additional treatment, but his investigation focused on the supply chain, not the financial backers. He might have leads we haven't explored yet. Holloway made a decision quickly. Bring him here. I want to hear his testimony directly. And coordinate with military intelligence. Someone in the procurement system had to facilitate these thefts. Find out who authorized the equipment transfers. The meeting continued for another 2 hours, Jessica answering questions until her voice went hoarse. They walked through timelines and evidence chains and witness statements. Everything documented. Everything building toward prosecutions that would probably take years to complete. When they finally released her, Jessica was escorted to a small room in the same building. More cell than bedroom, but secure and private. A military police officer stood outside her door, another at the end of the hallway. She collapsed onto the narrow bed, exhausted beyond measure. Someone knocked softly. Cross entered carrying food and bottled water. You did well in there. Holloway was impressed. Mitchell's dead, Jessica said flatly. We lost our key witness. We lost a witness. Not the key one. Cross sat down in the room's only chair. You're the key witness, Jessica. You're the one who saw everything firsthand and stopped them. You're the reason we have a case at all. I'm the reason they're killing people to cover their tracks. No, they're killing people because they're desperate. You exposed them, and now they're trying to protect what's left. That means we're winning. Jessica wanted to believe that. But Mitchell's death felt like a door slamming shut on justice. Someone had reached out and eliminated him before he could talk, which meant that same someone could reach anyone. Am I safe here? She asked quietly. Cross didn't answer immediately. Safer than anywhere else, but completely safe? No, not until we find who's really running this. What if we never do? Then you live in witness protection for the rest of your life. New name, new location, new everything. It's not fair, but it's survival. The thought of disappearing forever, losing her identity, her history, everything that made her Jessica Malone, was almost worse than the danger. She'd already lost her career, her home, her sense of normalcy. Losing her name felt like erasing her existence completely. Cross stood to leave, then paused at the door. For what it's worth, I think you're one of the bravest people I've ever worked with. Most civilians would have run the moment things got dangerous. You stayed and fought back. I didn't have a choice. Everyone has a choice. You made the right ones. After Cross left, Jessica lay in the dark listening to footsteps in the hallway outside. Guard rotations, radio chatter, the sounds of military life continuing around her. She thought about Lieutenant Brennan recovering in a hospital somewhere, about Jennifer Costa and her family in protective custody, about all the people whose lives had been upended because they'd tried to do the right thing. Her phone, the replacement phone Cross had given her, buzzed suddenly. Jessica grabbed it, her heart hammering. Unknown number. Again. She almost didn't open it, but she had to know. The message was short. Check your email. Password, Nightingale. Jessica's breath caught. Nightingale. Florence Nightingale, the founder of modern nursing. Someone was sending her a message using symbolism only another medical professional would recognize. She opened the encrypted email app Cross had installed, found a new message from an anonymous sender. Used the password. The email contained a single attachment, financial records, hundreds of pages of transactions, account numbers, shell company formations. Everything Mitchell had been hiding, now exposed and documented. And at the bottom, a note. Mitchell kept insurance. So do I. The person you're looking for is in these files. Look for Defense Procurement Account 7743. Jessica's hands shook as she scrolled through the documents. Complex financial instruments. Money moving through layers of corporate entities. But there, on page 47, was account 7743. The primary authorization signature belonged to someone named Andrew Kelton. She didn't recognize the name. Jessica grabbed her phone and called Cross immediately. I just received financial records. Someone sent me Mitchell's files. Who? I don't know. Anonymous? But there's a name here. Andrew Kelton, Defense Procurement Account 7743. Does that mean anything to you? Silence on the other end. Then Cross's voice, tight and controlled. Stay in your room. Lock the door. Don't let anyone in except me. I'll be there in 3 minutes. The line went dead. Jessica locked the door as instructed, her pulse racing. Through the small window, she could see Cross running across the compound with 4 agents flanking her. They entered the building at full sprint. The knock came exactly 3 minutes later. It's Cross. Open up. Jessica unlocked the door. Cross pushed inside with Torres and Hayes, all of them looking like they'd seen something terrible. Andrew Kelton, Cross said, is the Deputy Director of Defense Logistics Agency. He oversees all military procurement contracts across every branch of service. Jessica felt cold. So he had access to everything. Every shipment, every supplier, every contract. If he was corrupt, he could facilitate theft on a scale we never imagined. Cross pulled out her tablet, pulling up Kelton's official photo. Distinguished man in his 60s. Silver hair, expensive suit, confident smile. The same man Jennifer Costa had identified from the parking lot confrontation. He's the one who blackmailed her, Jessica said. He's been running the entire operation. And he's currently inside this building, Torres said quietly. He arrived 20 minutes ago as part of the Senate Oversight Committee's military liaison team. The room went silent. Kelton wasn't on the run. He wasn't hiding. He was here, in the same building where Jessica was testifying, sitting in meetings where classified information about the investigation was being discussed. He'd walked right into federal custody without anyone realizing he was the target. We need to arrest him immediately, Hayes said. On what evidence? Cross demanded. Anonymous financial records sent to a witness? Any defense attorney will have that thrown out in 30 seconds. We need something concrete. Then we get him talking, Jessica said suddenly. You want evidence? Put me in a room with him. Let me confront him. Record everything. If he's arrogant enough to walk in here, he might be arrogant enough to confess. Cross looked skeptical. That's incredibly dangerous. If he realizes you have that information, he already knows I'm dangerous. That's why he's here. He's not trying to hide anymore. He's trying to control the narrative and make sure nothing leads back to him. But he doesn't know we have Mitchell's files. Torres nodded slowly. She's right. Kelton thinks Mitchell's death closed the loop. He doesn't know there's insurance documentation. It's still a massive risk, Cross said. Everything about this has been a massive risk, Jessica countered. One more won't kill me. Probably. Cross studied her for a long moment, then made a decision. All right. But we do this carefully, full surveillance, agents ready to intervene. And if anything goes wrong, we pull you out immediately. They spent 30 minutes preparing. Jessica was fitted with a wire so small it was invisible under her clothes. Cross briefed her on questions to ask, topics to pursue, ways to get Kelton talking without making him suspicious. Remember, Cross said, he's a professional manipulator. He's been running this operation for probably a decade. He'll try to control the conversation, make you doubt yourself. Don't let him. I've dealt with men like him before, Jessica said. Dr. Holt thought he could intimidate me into silence. Didn't work. They arranged for Kelton to be brought to a conference room under the pretense of verifying testimony details. Jessica was already waiting inside when he arrived, sitting calmly at the table like this was routine. Kelton entered with the confidence of someone who believed he was untouchable. He saw Jessica and smiled politely. Miss Malone, I've heard a great deal about your bravery. It's an honor to meet you. His voice was smooth, practiced, the voice of someone who'd spent decades convincing people to trust him. Mr. Kelton, Jessica said evenly, I understand you oversee military procurement. Deputy Director, yes. I coordinate supply chain logistics for all branches. It's complex work, but important. He sat down across from her. I wanted to personally thank you for exposing the corruption at Mercy Point. These criminals were stealing from our soldiers. Unconscionable. How long have you known about the theft? We've had suspicions for about 18 months. Lieutenant Brennan's investigation helped confirm our fears. Thanks to your intervention, we can finally clean house. Jessica watched his face carefully. No tells. No nervousness. Just practiced sincerity that probably fooled everyone he encountered. David Mitchell, she said. Did you know him personally? We'd met at industry conferences. Healthcare logistics overlaps with military procurement occasionally, but I had no idea he was involved in criminal activity. He's dead now. Yes, tragic. The guilt must have been overwhelming. Kelton leaned back slightly. But his confession clears up many questions. We can move forward with prosecutions. What if his confession was fake? Kelton's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. That would be concerning. Do you have reason to believe it was? I have reason to believe someone killed him to keep him quiet. That's a serious accusation. Kelton's voice remained calm. Do you have evidence? Would you like to see it? She pulled out a printed page from the financial records. Just one page, carefully selected. Account numbers and transaction details with Kelton's authorization signature clearly visible. She slid it across the table. Kelton looked at it for exactly 3 seconds. His expression never changed. But his hand, resting on the table, curled into a fist so tight his knuckles went white. Where did you get this? He asked quietly. Someone who wanted to make sure the truth came out, even if Mitchell couldn't talk anymore. This document proves nothing. Financial records can be fabricated. Anyone with basic accounting software could create something like this. True. But when combined with testimony from Jennifer Costa identifying you as the person who blackmailed her, and when cross-referenced with military shipment records showing equipment diversions you personally authorized, it starts to look pretty convincing. Kelton stood slowly. I think this conversation is over. If you're accusing me of criminal activity, I'll need to consult with legal counsel. Sit down, Mr. Kelton. The command came from the door. Cross entered with 6 federal agents, all armed. Andrew Kelton, you're under arrest for conspiracy, fraud, theft of military property, and accessory to murder. Kelton's calm facade finally cracked. You can't prove any of that. Actually, we can. Mitchell kept very detailed records. Every transaction, every authorization, every payment. He was documenting everything in case he needed leverage. And now we have it all. Agents moved in, pulling Kelton's hands behind his back, securing handcuffs. He didn't resist physically, but his expression was pure fury now. You have no idea what you've done, he said to Jessica. The system you're trying to tear down is bigger than you can imagine. I'll be replaced within a week.
Maybe, Jessica said.
But you'll be in prison watching it happen.
They let him out, still threatening legal action, still insisting everything would be thrown out of court. But his voice had lost its confidence. He knew the evidence was real. Cross waited until he was gone before turning to Jessica. You did it. We have him. Jessica should have felt victorious. Instead, she just felt tired. He said he'll be replaced. Is that true?
Probably, but we're dismantling the network piece by piece. Every arrest makes it harder for them to operate. Eventually, there won't be anyone left to replace. It would take years, trials and appeals and legal battles. But for the first time since this started, Jessica believed they might actually win. Senator Holloway appeared in the doorway, looking impressed. Miss Malone, that was extraordinary. You just helped us arrest one of the highest-ranking corrupt officials in modern military history. Will it stick? Jessica asked. Or will his lawyers find a way to get him released?
Oh, it'll stick. We have documented evidence of theft totaling over $3 billion. Kelton's looking at life in federal prison minimum. And with him in custody, others in the network will start cutting deals to reduce their sentences. This investigation just became much simpler.
$3 billion. Jessica tried to comprehend that number and couldn't. All that money stolen from people who needed it. All those soldiers overseas who died because they didn't have proper equipment. All because men like Kelton valued profit over human life. What happens now? She asked. Now you testify officially. Full committee hearing on the record. Your testimony will be classified initially, but eventually it'll be declassified and made public. You're going to be the face of this case. Jessica nodded slowly. She'd accepted that reality already. Her life as anonymous nurse Jessica Malone was over. Whatever came next would be different. They kept her at Fort Belvoir for 3 more days, preparing for the official testimony. Jessica walked through her statement repeatedly, answering every possible question, documenting every detail. Lieutenant Brennan was brought in from Walter Reed to testify as well. He looked better, color in his face, moving without assistance. When he saw Jessica, he smiled. You really did it, he said. Brought down the whole network. We did it, Jessica corrected. Your investigation started this. Yeah, but you finished it, and you did it while they were actively trying to kill you. That takes a special kind of stubborn. They testified together, their statements corroborating each other perfectly. The Senate committee listened with grave expressions, asking pointed questions about oversight failures and systemic corruption. When it was finally over, Senator Holloway addressed them both directly. Lieutenant Brennan, Miss Malone, on behalf of the United States Senate, I want to thank you for your service and your courage. The actions you've taken have potentially saved countless lives and protected billions in taxpayer resources. You should both be commended. Formal commendations came later. Ceremonies and photographs and officials reading prepared statements. Jessica stood through it all feeling disconnected from her own body, like she was watching someone else's life unfold. Cross approached afterward, carrying a folder. I have news, good and bad. Which do you want first? Bad. We've identified 14 additional suspects in Kelton's network. Most are fleeing. It'll take months to track them all down. The conspiracy is definitely bigger than just him. And the good news? Kelton is cooperating, trying to reduce his sentence by providing names and evidence. He's already given us information that led to 3 arrests this morning. The network is collapsing faster than we anticipated. Jessica processed this. So it's really over? The immediate danger? Yes. You can go home if you want. Federal protection will continue, but you're no longer in active threat status. Home. The word felt strange. Jessica wasn't even sure where home was anymore. Her apartment in Portland felt like something from another lifetime. What about my job? She asked. Can I go back to nursing? Cross hesitated. Mercy Point Hospital is under new management. The entire executive structure has been replaced. They've reached out asking if you'd consider returning. To do what? Be the nurse everyone whispers about in hallways? To be their new director of emergency services. Full administrative position. They want someone with integrity to rebuild the department. Jessica stared at her. They want to promote me. After everything that's happened, they'd be insane not to. You exposed the corruption that nearly destroyed them. You're exactly the kind of person they need leading their recovery. It was tempting, taking the position that had been denied to her, walking back into that hospital as someone with actual authority. The vindication would be satisfying. But Jessica remembered how it felt to be powerless, to be ignored and dismissed and treated like she didn't matter. She remembered every other nurse or doctor who'd been driven out for asking questions or challenging authority. "I'll think about it," she said finally. 3 weeks later, Jessica stood in front of Mercy Point Hospital for the first time since that chaotic night in the ER. The building looked the same, but everything inside had changed. New CEO, new administrators, new policies emphasizing transparency and accountability. They'd even renamed the trauma bay after Dr. Sarah Vega, the physician who'd been killed for getting too close to the truth. Jessica walked through the entrance, past security guards who nodded respectfully, past nurses who stopped their conversations to watch her pass. She could hear whispers following her, not cruel ones anymore, but awed ones. The Director of Emergency Services office was on the 3rd floor, overlooking the ER below. Her name was already on the door, Jessica Malone, MD Director. She wasn't sure she wanted the job. The responsibility felt enormous, the expectations impossible. But then she looked down at the ER where she'd once mopped floors while doctors stepped over her, where she'd been dismissed and humiliated and treated like nothing, where she'd saved a man's life and brought down a criminal empire. Maybe impossible expectations were exactly what she was built for. Someone knocked on the office door frame. A young nurse, couldn't be more than 23, stood there nervously. "Director Malone? I'm sorry to interrupt, but there's a situation downstairs. A patient came in with suspicious injuries and the attending wants to send him home, but something feels wrong, and I didn't know who else to tell." Jessica looked at the young nurse's face, saw the fear there, the uncertainty, the knowledge that speaking up could cost her everything. She knew that feeling intimately. "Show me," Jessica said. They walked down to the ER together. The attending physician, someone Jessica didn't recognize, probably new staff, was arguing with security about discharging a patient who looked beaten half to death. "He said he fell downstairs," the attending was saying. "Injuries are consistent. There's no reason to hold him." Jessica stepped forward. "I'm Director Malone. What's the patient's name?" The attending looked irritated at the interruption. "Marcus Reed, 32 years old, claims he fell. Minor contusions, no fractures, ready for discharge." Jessica pulled the patient's chart and reviewed it quickly. The injuries weren't consistent with a fall. They were defensive wounds. Someone had hurt this man deliberately. "Hold the discharge," she ordered. "I want social services consulted and a full examination for evidence of assault. If this patient is in danger, we're not sending him back to it." The attending started to protest. Jessica cut him off. "That's not a request. That's a directive. And if you have concerns about my authority, you can discuss them with the hospital's CEO. But right now, you're going to follow protocol." The attending backed down immediately. The young nurse who'd raised the concern looked relieved. "Thank you." "Don't thank me. You did the right thing speaking up. That took courage." "You made it easier," the nurse said quietly, knowing someone would actually listen. Jessica watched the young nurse return to her duties, then turned back to survey the ER. Doctors and nurses moving efficiently, patients being treated with care. The chaos of emergency medicine without the underlying corruption that had poisoned everything. It wasn't perfect. Nowhere ever was. But it was better. And maybe that was enough. Her phone buzzed. Her new phone, swept for surveillance devices daily. A message from Lieutenant Brennan. "Saw the news. Congrats on the promotion. Drinks when you're back in town?" Jessica smiled and texted back, "Only if you're buying. I'm expensive now." His response came immediately, "Worth every penny." She slipped the phone back into her pocket and returned to her office, ready to face whatever came next. Outside her window, the sun was setting over Portland, painting the sky in shades of orange and red. Somewhere in the city, federal agents were still tracking down the last remnants of Kelton's network. Trials were being scheduled. Evidence was being processed. The fight wasn't over. But for the first time in longer than she could remember, Jessica Malone felt like maybe, just maybe, she'd won something that mattered. Her desk phone rang. The front desk. "Director Malone, there's someone here to see you. Says it's urgent. She won't give her name." Jessica felt her guard rise immediately. "Send her up."
2 minutes later, Jennifer Costa appeared in her doorway, looking nervous but determined. "I heard you took the job," Jennifer said. "I wanted to congratulate you in person." "How are you doing?" Jessica asked. "Is your family safe?" "In witness protection. New city, new names, new lives. It's strange, but we're okay." Jennifer hesitated. "I also wanted to ask you something. The investigation cleared me of the theft charges. My nursing license was reinstated, and I was wondering if maybe you want your job back." Jennifer nodded. "I know it's asking a lot, but this place is different now. You made it different, and I'd like to be part of that if you'll have me." Jessica studied the woman who'd risked everything to help expose the conspiracy, who'd been destroyed by the same system that had tried to destroy Jessica. "You're hired," she said. "Report to HR Monday morning." Jennifer's relief was visible. "Thank you. You have no idea what this means." "Actually, I do. Someone gave me a second chance when I didn't think I deserved one. I'm just passing it forward." After Jennifer left, Jessica sat alone in her office as night fell over the city. The ER lights glowed below, a beacon for people in crisis, people who needed help, people who had nowhere else to turn. This was why she'd become a nurse, not for the title or the recognition or the vindication. For this, for the ability to stand between people and harm, to use her skills and knowledge to make a difference, to ensure that the vulnerable had someone fighting for them. Her computer chimed with a new email. Classified header, Department of Defense sender. She opened it carefully. "Director Malone, this is to inform you that you've been selected to receive the Defense Meritorious Service Medal for extraordinary actions in support of national security operations. The ceremony will be held at the Pentagon next month. Details to follow. Additionally, we've been authorized to inform you that your testimony has resulted in the recovery of over $2.8 billion in stolen military equipment and the arrest of 47 individuals involved in the conspiracy. Your actions have directly prevented further loss of life and resources. On behalf of the Department of Defense, thank you for your service." Jessica read the email twice, then closed her laptop. Tomorrow she'd call and accept the award. Tomorrow she'd coordinate with federal prosecutors about upcoming trials. Tomorrow she'd start the hard work of rebuilding an ER department from the ground up. But tonight, she was just going to sit in her office and watch the lights of the emergency room glow in the darkness, knowing that for the first time in a very long time, the people working there were actually trying to save lives instead of steal from them. Her phone buzzed one more time. Unknown number. Her blood ran cold. She opened the message slowly. "Congratulations, Director Malone. You won this round. But the game isn't over. There are always more players, always more moves. Sleep well." Jessica stared at the message for a long moment, then deleted it without responding. Let them threaten. Let them watch. She'd spent her entire career being underestimated, dismissed, and pushed aside by people who thought she didn't matter. And every single one of them had learned the same lesson eventually. The quiet ones are always the most dangerous, because they're the ones paying attention while everyone else is busy talking. And when they finally speak up, the whole world has to listen. Jessica didn't sleep that night. She sat in her new office staring at the deleted message, knowing that somewhere out there, someone was still watching, still calculating, still believing they could intimidate her into silence. They didn't understand who they were dealing with. By 6 a.m., she was back in the ER reviewing patient charts and coordinating with the overnight staff. The work was grounding, real problems with real solutions. A patient needed stitches. Another required pain management. A child with a fever needed antibiotics. Simple. Direct. No conspiracies hiding underneath. Agent Cross called at 7:30. We traced that message. Burner phone, disposed of immediately after sending. But the cell tower data puts it originating from downtown Portland. Someone's still here. Let them stay, Jessica said. I'm not hiding anymore. That's admirably brave and incredibly stupid. These people have already killed to protect themselves. And I've already testified, the damage is done. Killing me now doesn't undo anything. It just creates a martyr and guarantees more scrutiny. Cross was quiet for a moment. You've thought about this. I've thought about nothing else. There's something you should know. Kelton started talking, really talking. He's given us names of 23 additional people involved in the network, including 2 senators and a deputy secretary of defense.
This goes higher than we imagined. Jessica felt something cold settle in her stomach. How high? High enough that people are very nervous about what else might come out. Your testimony opened a door that a lot of powerful people want closed again, permanently. What are you saying? I'm saying be careful. Watch everyone. Trust no one until we've finished rolling up the network. It could take months. The call ended. Jessica returned to her rounds, trying to focus on the work despite knowing that every person she encountered could potentially be compromised. The paranoia was exhausting. A week later, the Pentagon ceremony arrived. Jessica flew to Washington wearing a suit she'd never owned before, feeling like she was playing dress-up in someone else's life. Military brass and government officials filled the ceremonial hall. Cameras everywhere. She stood at attention while a general she'd never met pinned the Defense Meritorious Service Medal to her jacket. For extraordinary courage and service to the nation, he announced to the assembled crowd. Applause echoed through the hall. Strangers shaking her hand, people congratulating her on bravery she wasn't sure she actually possessed. She'd just done what seemed necessary at the time. The rest had been survival. Lieutenant Brennan was there in full dress uniform, recovered now and returning to active duty. He found her afterward during the reception. You look uncomfortable, he observed. I am. I don't belong here. Neither do I. But they needed to give us medals so they could feel better about letting the corruption exist for a decade. He handed her a glass of champagne. Drink. It helps. Jessica took a sip. What happens now? For you? Back to intelligence work. Different unit, different focus. They're creating a task force specifically to investigate military supply chain integrity. Apparently, my near-death experience qualified me to lead it. Congratulations. Something like that. He studied her carefully. What about you? Are you really going back to Portland? I already did. I have a department to rebuild. You could do anything now. With your profile, your credentials, your testimony, you could write your own ticket. Why go back to the place that treated you like garbage? Jessica thought about that. Because it's different now, and because running away feels like letting them win. Brennan smiled slightly. You really are stubborn. I prefer determined. Senator Holloway approached, interrupting their conversation. Miss Malone, I wanted to speak with you privately if you have a moment. They walked to a quieter corner of the hall, away from the crowd. Holloway's expression was serious. I've been authorized to offer you a position with the Senate Oversight Committee, Healthcare Fraud Investigation. You'd be consulting on cases similar to what you exposed at Mercy Point. The salary would be substantial, and you'd be making a real difference on a national scale. It was tempting. Legitimacy. Authority. The ability to prevent what had happened to her from happening to others. But Jessica thought about Jennifer Costa starting work on Monday, about the young nurse who'd felt safe enough to raise concerns because she knew someone would listen, about all the other nurses and doctors who needed someone fighting for them from inside the system, not from Washington. I appreciate the offer, Jessica said carefully, but I'm needed in Portland. Holloway looked surprised. You're turning down a presidential appointment? I'm choosing where I can do the most good. And that's in an ER, not a committee hearing room. You're certain? Completely. Holloway nodded slowly, respect evident in her expression. Then Portland is lucky to have you, but if you change your mind, the offer stands. The ceremony concluded. Jessica flew home that evening, the medal in her carry-on bag, already thinking about the ER schedules and staffing rotations waiting for her attention. 2 months passed. The trials began. Dr. Holt pleaded guilty and received 15 years in federal prison. Robert Nash got 20. Linda Sawyer turned state's witness and received a reduced sentence of 8 years. The temp nurse who'd tried to kill Lieutenant Brennan was sentenced to life without parole. Andrew Kelton's trial was the spectacle everyone had anticipated. Federal prosecutors presented overwhelming evidence, financial records, testimony from dozens of witnesses, documented proof of theft totaling over $3 billion. The defense tried to claim Kelton had been following orders from unnamed superiors, but the jury didn't buy it. Guilty on all counts, 45 years in federal prison with no possibility of parole. Jessica watched the verdict on the news in her office, surrounded by the ER staff who'd gathered to see justice delivered. When the sentence was announced, the room erupted in applause. It's finally over, Jennifer said quietly beside her. No, Jessica corrected. It's finally starting. The real work is rebuilding trust, making sure this never happens again. That work proved harder than the investigation had been. Every day brought new challenges, budget constraints because the hospital was rebuilding its reputation, staffing shortages because qualified people were hesitant to work somewhere so recently tainted by scandal, patients who questioned whether they could trust the care they received. But slowly, steadily, things improved. Jessica implemented new oversight protocols, anonymous reporting systems for staff concerns, regular audits of supply chains and medication inventories, transparency measures that made it harder for corruption to hide. She promoted the nurses and doctors who'd been marginalized under the old regime, created mentorship programs for younger staff, established a culture where questioning authority wasn't career suicide, but encouraged responsibility. 6 months after taking the position, the hospital received full accreditation renewal with commendations for administrative integrity and patient safety protocols. The report specifically cited leadership changes as instrumental in the transformation. Jessica framed the certificate and hung it in her office, not because she was proud of the recognition, but because it represented what was possible when people refused to accept corruption as inevitable. One afternoon, a familiar face appeared in her doorway. Reeves, out of his tactical gear, wearing civilian clothes that made him look almost ordinary. "Heard you turned down a Senate appointment," he said. "News travels fast." "I'm military intelligence. Everything travels fast." He stepped inside, glancing around the office. "Nice setup. Better than a bunker in Virginia. What brings you to Portland?" "Officially, routine follow-up on witness security protocols. Unofficially, I wanted to see if you were really doing okay or just pretending for the cameras." Jessica considered lying, then decided against it. "Some days are harder than others. I still check every room before entering, still watch everyone a little too closely, still get threatening messages occasionally from people who think I destroyed their careers." "Did you?" "Yeah. But they destroyed their own integrity first. I just exposed it." Reeves nodded. "For what it's worth, you made the right choice staying here. The Senate would have eaten you alive. This way you're actually changing things instead of talking about changing things." "Is that the difference between Washington and everywhere else?" "Pretty much." He left after 20 minutes, but his visit reminded Jessica that she wasn't alone. There were people who understood what she'd been through, who recognized the cost of standing up when it would have been easier to stay silent. A year after the night everything changed, Mercy Point Hospital held a ceremony dedicating the newly renovated ER, the Sarah Vega Memorial Trauma Center, named for the doctor who'd been killed for asking questions. Jessica gave a brief speech to assembled staff and community members. She talked about integrity and courage and the responsibility everyone shared to speak up when something felt wrong. She didn't mention herself, didn't need to. Everyone knew the story. Afterward, an older woman approached her hesitantly. "Director Malone? I'm Emily Holt, Dr. Holt's daughter." Jessica's first instinct was to step back, create distance, but she saw the girl's face, nervous, ashamed, desperate, and stayed put. "I wanted to apologize for my father," Emily said quietly, "for everything he did to you and everyone else. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know." "I believe you," Jessica said. "You're not responsible for his choices. Everyone treats me differently now, at school, in town. They see his name and they assume I'm like him." Jessica understood that feeling intimately. "You're not your father. You get to decide who you become. Don't let his mistakes define your life." Emily's eyes filled with tears. "How do you move forward after something like this?" "One day at a time, one decision at a time. You choose to be better than what hurt you. It's hard, but it's possible." The girl nodded, then left quickly before the tears could fall. Jessica watched her go, hoping those words would help even slightly. Everyone deserved a chance to be more than their worst moments or their family's failures. That evening, Jessica stood in the same ER where everything had started. The room looked different now. New equipment, fresh paint, better lighting. But more importantly, it felt different. The tension that had permeated everything under Holt's administration was gone. People worked together instead of against each other. Staff raised concerns without fear of retaliation. It wasn't perfect. Nothing ever was. But it was better. And better was enough. Jessica's phone rang. Agent Cross. They talked occasionally now, mostly about trial updates and security protocols. "Wanted you to hear this from me first," Cross said. "We arrested the last person on Kelton's list this morning, Senator James Whitmore. He'd been funneling military contracts to shell companies in exchange for campaign contributions. How many does that make total? 73 arrests across 12 states. The network is completely dismantled. You're officially out of danger. No more threats. No more surveillance. It's over." Jessica waited for relief to hit. Instead, she just felt tired. What happens to all those people now? Prison, most of them for decades. Some will die behind bars. The system you exposed is gone, Jessica. You won. Had she won? Jessica wasn't sure. The people responsible would face consequences, yes. But the damage they'd caused, the soldiers who'd died without proper equipment, the patients who'd suffered from substandard care, the lives ruined by blackmail and intimidation, none of that could be undone. "Thank you for telling me," Jessica said. "One more thing. There's a journalist working on a book about the case. She wants to interview you. I told her I'd pass along the request." "I'll think about it." "Jessica, you should do it. Your story matters. People need to know what you did." After the call ended, Jessica walked down to the ER floor and found the young nurse who'd raised concerns about the assault patient months ago, the one who'd been brave enough to speak up. "Can I ask you something?" Jessica said. "Why did you come to me that day? You didn't know if I'd listen." The nurse, Maria, her name was Maria, thought about it. "Because I'd heard what happened with you and Dr. Holt. Everyone had, and I figured if you were willing to stand up to him, maybe you'd be willing to listen to someone like me." "Someone like you?" "Young, inexperienced, easy to dismiss." Maria smiled slightly. "But you didn't dismiss me. You listened, and that patient is alive now because of it." Jessica felt something shift inside her chest. This was why she'd stayed, not for recognition or medals or Senate appointments. For moments like this, for the ability to create a space where people felt safe enough to do the right thing. "Keep speaking up," Jessica said, "even when it's scary. Especially when it's scary. That's how we prevent what happened here from happening anywhere else." Maria nodded seriously. "I will. I promise." That night, Jessica went home to her apartment, the same apartment she'd lived in throughout everything, now swept regularly for surveillance devices out of habit more than necessity. Her cat was waiting, as indifferent to her dramatic life changes as cats typically were. She fed him, made dinner for herself, and sat by the window overlooking the city. Somewhere out there, people were working overnight shifts at hospitals and clinics. Nurses and doctors trying to help others, hoping their institutions were clean and honest. Most were. But some weren't. And those places needed people willing to pay attention and speak up when something felt wrong. Jessica pulled out her laptop and opened a blank document, started typing. "My name is Jessica Malone. I'm the Director of Emergency Services at Mercy Point Hospital in Portland, Oregon. A year ago, I was a night shift nurse who everyone ignored. This is what happened when I decided I mattered." She wrote for 3 hours, documenting everything, not for a book or publicity, for the record. For anyone else who might find themselves in a similar situation and need to know that standing up was possible. When she finished, she saved the document and emailed it to Agent Cross with a simple message. "For your files, in case it's useful someday." The response came within minutes. "It will be. Thank you for everything." Jessica closed her laptop and looked at the medal sitting on her bookshelf. The Defense Meritorious Service Medal, proof that what she'd done mattered to people far beyond Portland. But honestly, the medal that mattered most was invisible. It was the trust of staff members who felt safe raising concerns. The patients who received better care because corruption had been exposed and eliminated. The nurses who saw what she'd accomplished and realized they had power too. That was the real award. The lasting one. Jessica stood at her window watching the city lights blur into constellations of human activity. Somewhere in those lights were people fighting their own battles against systems that tried to silence them. People who felt powerless and dismissed and invisible. She hoped they'd hear her story somehow. Hoped they'd understand that the quiet ones, the overlooked ones, the underestimated ones, were often the most dangerous to corruption. Because they were the ones paying attention while everyone else was distracted by titles and authority and assumed competence. And when they finally spoke, the world had no choice but to listen. or burn. Jessica smiled at her reflection in the window glass. She looked older than she had a year ago, tired, scarred in ways that didn't show on her body, but stronger too. She'd walk through fire and come out holding the truth, and she'd do it again if she had to, because some fights weren't about winning. They were about refusing to lose yourself in the process of surviving. The hospital had tried to break her. The conspiracy had tried to silence her. Powerful people had tried to intimidate her into submission. Every single one of them had failed. Not because Jessica Malone was special or extraordinary or uniquely brave, but because she'd decided a long time ago that being dismissed and underestimated by people who didn't deserve their power wasn't the same as being powerless. It just meant she had nothing left to lose. And people with nothing to lose were the most dangerous opponents of all. Her phone buzzed one final time that night. Lieutenant Brennan. Saw the news about Whitmore's arrest. We really did it. Drinks to celebrate? Jessica typed back. Rain check. I have rounds in the morning. But yes, soon. She set the phone down and looked at her reflection one more time. The woman staring back at her wasn't the exhausted, defeated nurse who'd been mopping ER floors while doctors stepped over her. She was someone who'd learned that silence was complicity, that speaking up was survival, and that the system only worked when people refused to accept corruption as normal. She was someone who'd discovered that power didn't come from titles or positions. It came from refusing to look away when everyone else did, from trusting yourself when the world told you to be quiet, from understanding that your voice mattered even when people pretended not to hear it, especially then. Jessica turned away from the window and got ready for bed, knowing that tomorrow would bring new challenges and problems, but also knowing she was ready for them, because she'd learned the most important lesson of all. The people who change the world aren't the ones with the most authority. They're the ones who refuse to stop caring when authority fails. And Jessica Malone had never been very good at giving up.